Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to call this meeting to order. This is the first meeting of the Assets and Infrastructure SPC since the organizational meeting. I'll call the meeting to order as the clerk and begin with the election of the chair. So, are there any nominations from members of the committee with regards to the position of chair?
I'd like to make a nomination.
Go ahead, Councillor Park.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. I'd like to nominate Mark Campbell as the chairman going into this next year for a one-year term.
Excellent. We have a nomination on the floor for Councillor Campbell. Pardon me. Councillor Campbell, do you accept?
Yes. Yes.
Are there any other nominations for the position of chair?
I'd like to nominate some other chairman. No, just joking. Have a debate.
Seeing no other nominations for the position of chair, Councillor Campbell, you're declared elected chair by acclamation. I'll proceed with the election of the vice chair, if that's okay with you, Mr. Chair, and then we'll turn it over to you. Any nominations from the committee for the position of vice chair?
Consultation of at least 3 seconds. I'd like to nominate Councillor Palladino.
Yes, I will.
Councillor Palladino accepts. Seeing no other nominations, Councillor Palladino, you're declared vice chair for the term of the next year. Thank you.
Well done. Well done. Sorry, here we go. I'm getting there. I'm trying to remember. All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Assets and Infrastructure Standing Policy Committee. I will begin with our acknowledgement statement. The City of Lethbridge acknowledges that we are gathered on the lands of the Blackfoot people of the Canadian Plains and pays respect to the Blackfoot people, past, present, and future, while recognizing and respecting their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationships to the land. The City of Lethbridge is also the home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. Mr. Clerk, can we get a roll call, please?
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councillor Parker.
Here.
Councillor Palladino.
Present.
Councillor Carlson.
Present.
Thank you. And Deputy Mayor Campbell.
Present.
I see members of council have joined us online. Councillor Dodick is online, as well as Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, Mayor Higgin, Councillor Croson, and Councillor Middleton-Hope are here as well. Thank you.
All right, next item is the adoption of the agenda. Mr. Clerk, are there any changes?
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yesterday, there was a recompilation of the agenda to add 3 pieces of correspondence that were received in advance of the meeting. And then this morning, we recompiled as well to add one that was received late this morning as well. It's a letter from the Tourism Industry Association of Alberta. Hard copies will be circulated momentarily, and digital copy will be sent out to council who is not present in the room with us as well.
Okay, no other changes?
That's everything.
Any objections? Then we adopt that, the agenda. Moving on to the consent agenda, be it resolved that the minutes of Civic Standing Policy Committee held on October 5th, 2023 be approved and the chair and city clerk designate be authorized to sign the same, and further be it resolved that the Assets and Infrastructure Standing Policy Committee receive as information the status of initiatives. Any questions or concerns? I see none. All in favor? Opposed? That goes. All right. Let's move right to the presentations. And this comes from Mandy Parker, General Manager, Waste and Environment, on the Toxic and E-Waste Roundup Pilot Update. Ms. Parker, welcome.
Thank you. My name is Mandy Parker with the Waste and Environment Department, and I'm just here to update you on the toxic and e-waste roundup. Next slide, please. I will just go quickly. This is a short presentation on the background, outcomes, and the recommendation. And that is the Transportation Master Plan. There we go. So if you wanted to get to slide 2, and next slide, please. It's just a bit about the background. On November 15th, there was a official business motion to bring back options to deliver the household hazardous waste program at the depots. In April 13th, 2022, at an economic SPC, the approved recommendation was to implement the toxic roundup pilot, and after 1 year report back, and that's why I'm here today. We held 2 toxic roundups, one on November 19th at City Hall, and one on April 22nd, which was Earth Day, at the NMAX Center. Next slide, please. So kind of an infograph of the outcomes. It was successful with a net cost of $73,400 for the 2 events. At City Hall, it was more central. We had more cars, 100 more cars. It was lined out onto 6th Avenue. That's how successful it was. And we had a limited capacity for e-waste. That's probably why the tonnage is a bit lower. At the NMAX Center, we had lots of space for the material and for the traffic queuing, and we had more capacity for e-waste. And that's probably why the numbers were up significantly. Next slide, please. So given the changes that are coming to the household hazardous waste program through the extended producer's responsibility and some of the unknowns that come along with that, our recommendation is to host 2 events in 2024 to reevaluate after those 2 events, and based on the changes to the household hazardous waste system at the end of 2024, the new program will be implemented in 2025. And we'd like to continue to promote our current year-round drop-off location at the Waste and Recycling Center. Are there any questions?
That's my job. Thank you very much for your presentation. And yes, do we have any other questions from our members of the committee or anyone online? Acting Mayor Middleton Hope.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation, Ms. Parker. What have we got planned for 2024?
It would just be 2 more toxic roundups, one during Environment Week and one during Waste Reduction Week.
And are we any farther along the roadway towards decentralized pickups? Material and electronics?
How do you mean?
At the depots, the individual depots, yeah.
Back in April, with the recommendation to the economic SPC, toxic roundups were more feasible.
Yep.
Because they were costly to change over one of the depots to an eco station. It still could come forward, maybe during the CIP process, or if that's something you guys would like to bring forward. But just due to cost and the changing programs, 2 more roundups would probably be more beneficial than making that decision right now.
Okay, thank you.
Were there any other issues that you noticed in the last, those 2 roundups? Anything that you can't handle, or any problems at all?
No, we do get some material that aren't part of the program, and we can still take it. The contractor who collects it just charges us what the cost to dispose or recycle that is. So it's not funded by the program, but we still take it so it stays out of the landfill.
And I would imagine communication to the public is key, as well as making sure that they know when these are and what's available to be deposited.
Absolutely.
Yeah, great. Any other questions? Yes, Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to, if I can, to Ms. Parker. Ms. Parker, are there any limits? We had 700 to 800 vehicles and 46,000 kilograms. Are there any limits on individuals? Can I bring a trailer?
Well, you could, but you should just take that out to the waste and recycling center. It would be a lot easier for you. No, there are no limits, typically what would fit in your vehicle, and there were some people that came back 2 or 3 times with their trunks full of material. We do have the year-round facility where you can drop it off at your leisure, so you don't have to wait for one day. Take it out as you go through your house. We did have a capacity issue with the first toxic roundup on e-waste because we didn't anticipate the level of participation, and we were out of space within 3 hours, so we had to turn away a lot of people. But there are e-waste drop-off points in many locations across the city.
Thank you for that. And just remind me, what all was included and what was specifically excluded from the roundups?
The only thing that's really excluded are lithium batteries. But we pretty much take anything. We'll find a spot for it. Now, if you're talking about the reimbursement through the program, that's a little bit different. But in order to take what we can out of the landfill, we'll basically take anything. We don't want to see things like ammunition. Those can go to a special place, or sharps. Those have a location to go to, but we will take chemicals.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great. It just struck my, asbestos is probably something you wouldn't accept either. People might not realize they have asbestos that they're throwing away. Is that an issue?
Not necessarily at the toxic roundup. That would typically go to the landfill under our special waste program, and usually have an abatement person, and there's regulations with that. It's a different waste stream.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, any other questions from, we do have, sorry, who is it? Carlson, oh, of course, no, no.
Yeah, of course. Sorry, Mr. Chair, just a quick thought about further diversion. Ms. Parker, I know there's at least one, if not a couple, companies that do refurbish electronics. Do they have an opportunity at these roundups to maybe remove or utilize items that would just go to landfill instead?
I'm not too sure. I know with the e-waste roundup, we hire a contractor, and they take care of that. What they do on their end once it gets to their transfer station, I'm not sure. I could look into that further.
I'd love to hear about that, because I've noticed a couple of companies have started up that they'll take your ancient computers, etc., and refurbish them and repurpose them, and a lot of them donate or resell. So I'd love to know what happens down the chain. So thank you.
I see no other questions. So I have a resolution from Councillor Palladino. Oh. Okay. Okay. All right. Do you have 5 minutes if you wish to speak? Okay.
When you said that a lot of people, or some people brought,
Please speak to the mics and speak to us.
because she's the one that
Yeah,
mentioned it.
she'll hear, but we need to speak to us first.
Okay. When you say that there's a few people that bought a lot of things and they made repeat trips and they could go straight to the waste and recycling depot, is it free?
There it
It's
is.
on. Some things are free, especially the e-waste. And if you bring it on a Saturday, for sure it's free. Items that are part of the program will be free. Some of the items that are not, you get charged by the kilogram.
Yeah, because these events, those roundups are free, aren't they?
They are.
Yeah. So I just wondered if people are going to be leery of going to the center if it's going to charge them to do so.
There's an opportunity for free.
Okay.
Ma'am, can you just, for 1 second, just for our record, could you just give us what your name is, please?
Esther Urano.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. Anyone else want to, there is another person, step forward, state your name.
My name is Jacobus van der Wielen. I'd like to know all that environment stuff, how much carbon you guys put in the air already? From the meetings, from the green bins, everything else. You say you're doing a really good job. they save all that stuff to come out of the garbage dump. Now, how much pollution you guys had made already to pick up everything, okay? To get rid of it, okay? I came here 2 or 3 times already. I asked how much carbon was done. Nobody gave me an answer, okay? I would really like to know, because to me, you don't save nothing. Thank you.
Parker, do you have a response to that at this point?
We have looked into, for the Green Cart program, what the carbon footprint is of that. It isn't possible right now to calculate that. What the company for the bins is doing is working on making their materials recyclable and don't have the numbers to calculate what that carbon footprint is yet. We could calculate the transportation of that just based on fuel consumption, but we haven't calculated that yet. It's a little difficult to get the whole system, the numbers for that.
Do you have a timeline that you could figure that out? Or
The information is just not available.
Okay, great. Any other questions before we move on? Or anyone want to come to the mic? Seeing none, I have a resolution from Councillor Palladino. Be it resolved that the Assets and Infrastructure Standing Policy Committee recommends Council 1, direct administration to hold 2 toxic and e-waste roundups in 2024, and 2, direct the Waste and Environment Department to reassess the budget after the 2024 events as a hazardous waste, the household hazardous waste program is changing in 2025. Councillor Palladino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we've heard, this report is an update on the outcome of a pilot project consisting of 2 roundups held back in November in 2022 and a follow-up one in April of 2013 or 23. The goal of the project was to provide a means for residents to collect and safely remove hazardous household waste and e-waste and divert it from our landfill. I was one of the 700 to 800 vehicles that were served one morning at the NMAX, and I must say the event was well organized and managed. Furthermore, this initiative aligns with the city's strategic plan and environmental policies. So I am supporting this, and with that, I will call for the vote.
Any comments, debate? I see none. All in favor? That passes. Next up, Adam Sand Amang, Transportation Engineer, regarding the 2023 Transportation Master Plan. Did I say your name right? I'm sorry if I didn't.
Close enough. Adam St. Amand. All right. All right. So here today to talk to you about the Transportation Master Plan again. Go on to the next slide. So our request today is that the Asset and Infrastructure Standing Policy Committee recommends that Council adopt the 2023 Transportation Master Plan. The Transportation Master Plan is a long-term plan for how the city's transportation networks are going to serve the city, how they interact with one another, and how they connect to land uses. We want to make sure that we have options for people to get around in the city, whether they're driving a vehicle, taking a bus, walking, cycling, whether it's businesses trying to get their goods delivered. We want to make sure that we have options and ability to get those wherever they need to go, however they need to get there. This plan has involved a lot of community engagement. We have a new travel demand model that we've generated to support this plan. We've done a bunch of technical analysis, and we've taken into consideration a lot of the details from, or as many details as we could from other plans and studies that have been done to date. So the big highlights in the Transportation Master Plan are the future road network, the networks for active modes, making sure that we have a list of policies and making sure they're prioritized, and also just making sure that we have a plan in place, because some funding sources are dependent on there being a plan in place to access funding. Next slide. So Transportation Master Plan is Project C17 from the Capital Improvement Program. And from this, since we've started this plan, or before this plan came into place. We had the municipal development plan completed, which provided a lot of guidance into the direction of where the transportation master plan is going. As I mentioned, I'm here again today. We started this with you here at the Civic Works Standing Policy Committee a few years ago. And I remember we had a nice session where we crafted a vision statement, and I was very pleased with how that went. We got a vision statement completed that afternoon, and that was wonderful, and that's been guiding us throughout this plan. We've been here to talk about the community engagement that we've done in phases 1 and 2. We came back again to have a findings and opportunities workshop back in May of 2022, and got an idea of what the priorities are from council and from the Civic Works SPC, and that again helped to guide us in our recommendations in the plan. We've been here, we've talked about the third river crossing with the updated information. And then we're here in the summer to show you the draft executive summary, and I've continued doing work on the plan since then, and today we finally have a final draft for your consideration. Next slide. So ideally, we would like you to adopt this plan and to make sure that we've got the necessary guidance to move forward efficiently as we continue to plan and construct the transportation network here in Lethbridge. Next slide. So our recommendation is that the Assets and Infrastructure SPC recommend that council adopt the Transportation Master Plan to continue to guide us into the future. And yeah, we just want to make sure that we have that necessary guidance and as we move forward, and make sure that we're not missing funding sources by not having a plan in place. And that is all.
Thank you very much for your presentation. We have some questions from those that are here. Councillor Croson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much. I've been watching this, of course, as it's been developing over the past 3 years. And there's been a lot of engagement. There's been a lot of work going on in this. It's certainly got some multimodal. The one thing I want to know a little bit more about right now is you are looking to develop an expanded heavy truck network along select corridors. So are we looking truck routes? Are we looking dangerous goods routes? How are we planning to connect those with the airport, the rail traffic, the highways? Where do we most need these? Just explain more about where the future of those truck routes would be.
So for the most part, the parts of the city that are already built, the truck route structure wouldn't change. It's the expanded truck routes is really stretching out into the newer parts of the city. Up as the industrial area continues to expand north, those truck routes following it in that northward expansion. And later on, once we do get Chinook Trail built on the west side and a third river crossing built, we would think about whether or not it's appropriate to have that as a truck route or not. I think that's most of how we're looking at that. Where there aren't truck routes, where the rules around that is, yes, a truck can still go to a business, but it has to take the shortest route to get there. And of course, that'll still be allowed because we need businesses to be able to get their goods in and out.
One of the difficulties I've seen with truck routes is they become, because they are built to be the fastest way to connect, everybody else wants to use them as well, right? Scenic Drive was technically constructed as a truck route and still is. I don't think most people would realize that that is actually a truck route. So how do we ensure that truck routes stay effective for trucks when they are the ones we all want to take for everything else as well?
Yeah, in the end, the roads are going to be used by whoever's driving and wanting to get there. And yes, truck routes do make for usually a nice, quick, efficient way to get places because it was designed that way for trucks. It's all going to end up being part of that traffic mix that's out there. But making sure that those routes are as unimpeded as possible and the trucks can get through as well as the cars and everyone else driving, I think is key, is just making sure that those routes are designed right to be able to handle the trucks in the first place.
If we look at changes on scenic, et cetera, we're still keeping the big trucks in mind. And my next question is just road infrastructure improvements, creating new community internal streets. I went through the entire plan that we had. I didn't see a definition of what do you mean by that? Where are you adding internal streets and what are those?
So the internal streets for new communities, What we're alluding to is, while the Transportation Master Plan sets out a lot of the arterial road system, we are depending on the developers and development industry when they're figuring out what they want to do to create new neighborhoods, to figure out that local road network and that collector road network. We didn't want to come in with a Transportation Master Plan and impose that structure. We want to make sure that that's something that we can work with developers to develop and make sure it makes sense for that community.
Shut my mic off. Thank you.
Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much, Mr. Sandeman, for the presentation. A couple of questions I had. It indicates in our materials that individual projects will still need engagement. So there's still opportunity for the public to engage in different components of this project?
Definitely. So the Transportation Master Plan is a very high-level document. And as we begin to look at specific corridors and specific projects, each one of those projects will undergo its own planning process and its own detailed design process. And those processes involve a lot of community engagement as well. This one here being such a high-level project, we do take in the feedback, but because we're asking at such a very broad level, we do expect there to be more engagement once we get to those more specific projects on an individual project basis.
Wanted to make sure that the community understood that what we're seeing here today, when it moves on to council, isn't finalized and done. There are still opportunities for people to engage as we move through that. The second question I had is, where are we at with retrofitting for accessibility? I see downtown, we've got a lot of that done with what we've redone for roadways there. But where else in the community are we still working on that? What percentage are we done? What do we still have left to do?
Yep, so it's still a work in progress. There's a long way to go. Downtown is one of the more intensely used pedestrian areas, which is why it's been seeing a lot more of that accessibility improvement initially. I believe the hope is to get accessible corridors along with full ramps and tactile strips along all of our major collector roads and other very busy areas over time. And it'll be something that definitely requires time to develop and money to be able to implement.
Do we have an estimate on how much we've got completed to date?
Yes, I don't have it on me right now. The very back of the draft or of the Transportation Master Plan, there should have been a monitoring section.
Okay.
And it should have a percentage in there on that table as to where it's at, estimated to be at today.
Okay, I'll pull the information from out of there then. Thank you.
Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Mount, for presenting this. I appreciate the work that's gone into it. Just to follow up on Councillor Schmidt-Rempel's question, because if the community is looking at this, and I appreciate the formatting you've put it in for the community to read, but I think it's section 7, the implementation plan, it contemplates hundreds of millions of dollars. And I just want to really point out and make sure I have it correct, that approving the master plan is not approving each project. Each of those projects will come to council individually for approval. Is that correct?
That is correct. So each project will likely approach council in the CIP Capital Improvement Program deliberations. So you'll see them kind of, here's this project, and at that point be deciding to put money towards that project or not to put money towards that project. So the Transportation Master Plan just sets out, here's what ideally would like to do, but in the end, council decides, yes, this project goes ahead, no, this project does not.
Mr. Sanchez wanted to chime in here.
Yes, just want to chime in a little bit on this last question and also add another detail on the previous question about the accessibility work that the city has been doing. On this particular question, Adam just nailed it. The master plan is a high-level document. We're asking here for adopting the plan, but it doesn't mean that all the work and the projects that are included in this master plan is already being approved. Each one of those are going to come as they are presented during the CIP, and as mentioned before, even the CIP has an engagement portion included there that people will have an opportunity to speak about this. When we talk about the accessibility and mobility, there is a working group that is comprised of different stakeholders within the city and also external stakeholders. There will be a work that will be done over the next few months to create the tool in order to do an assessment and an inventory and continue moving forward in the accessibility work, not only on the roads and the streets, but also within city facilities. So that's where this group of stakeholders between different departments within the city is working to get this completed and to have an update most likely next year after we complete that assessment.
Back to you, Mr. Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for that clarification. I just wanted to point out to the public that if council does approve this plan, it's not saying yes to $720 million of investment immediately. They'll be done on a case-by-case basis as funding is available. And maybe on that funding, if I can, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure who, through you to administration, I'm not sure who wants to take this. We do get various grants for transportation. The main one is BMTG, the Basic Municipal Transportation Grant. Annually, what do we get in grants from other orders of government for our transportation projects? And is there a fixed amount that council does usually, traditionally, set aside in our operating budget? And if we just sort of know on a general or approximate annual basis what those figures are.
I think Mr. Matthews has that answer.
Through the chair to Councillor Carlson. So in regards to that, you are correct that the terminology was the Basic Municipal Transportation Grant. That's under the MSI overall umbrella. I don't have the breakdown right in front of me here of the amount of the Basic Municipal Transportation Grant, but on average, we're expecting, I believe, is around $13 million in total. Now that would be what we classify as our Section C and D projects, so transportation and community projects. One thing to, as members of council are aware, this is transitioning into local government fiscal framework. We don't necessarily know what our allocation would be. We're going based on the allocation amounts that, the historical allocation amounts in 2024 that the province has provided. I believe we should, I'm hoping that we'll know here in the next number of months what the allocation looks like going forward after that.
Thank you for that. Maybe I get a bit of a follow-up to that if I can, just for clarity. When we transition from MSI and BMTG into LGFF, sorry, when we go from the old way to the new way, where it's all pulled together, are there still going to be pockets of the LGFF that are strings attached? Because with the BMTG, we had to spend that on transportation. Is when they switch to local government fiscal framework, do they care where we spend the money, or is it fewer strings?
Through the chair to Councillor Crowson, that is some of the questions we're unsure of at this stage here. They are one of the things they're looking at as the funding formula. So I know the Alberta municipalities, as well as the municipality system for the counties and so forth, they have presented models, but we haven't, to my knowledge, the province hasn't came back and said how that allocation is coming out with yet. So will there be conditions, whether they break it apart the same way they did to BMTG in the past, or the Basic Municipal Transportation Grant? We're not sure yet. One thing I will say here is I see my team in the background, so to answer your question, the BMTG historically has been around $6 million of that $13 million amount. So, roughly about half of it would have been for the transportation. Not sure what the new program is going to look like yet.
Okay, and if there are no strings attached to those dollars, would it make sense? Would it be prudent for council to craft policy around that, so that council has a policy of, say 50% of the new LGFF goes to transportation, sort of keeping it similar to the way it was done in the past, or just keep it on an ad hoc basis? I'm kind of a policy guy, so I'm just wondering if that's something we've considered.
Through the chair to Councillor Carlson, so in regards to that, it's always good to have a policy in that regard. In fact, it would be one of the things that we were referencing in the economic SPC meeting a number of weeks back. Here are some of the different policies that we would like to bring back or for consideration for council on this. not just on capital, but also on reserves and so forth and other things. So in that regard, yes. I think the biggest thing on this that we probably want to take a look at is also some information around asset management. And the reason I say that ties in, that will give some council some knowledge in, here's our assets, here's what we need to replace in the future, how much of that funding should we be setting aside for those particular kind of assets? And then, of course, the policies would also take a look at for new assets versus existing assets, and what's the priority of council. So as council may recollect, in our fiscal principal practices of council, it says the maintaining of existing assets should take priority over new assets. So all of that piece of information would be a good time to come back and take a look at some policy pieces.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your report. I know this was a massive undertaking for you, so my question may seem a bit minuscule, but during your public engagement process, the term multimodal must have come up several times, and specifically in areas where walking paths are shared with bicycles. Did you receive any concerns with the speed at which e-bikes and these new scooters can reach? Maybe I'm just a crabby old man, but this coupled with the quiet motors, and they sneak up behind me most of the time, and I've been in a couple of close calls. Should they really be in parks is another question. Yeah, and I'm wondering if we need to put speed limits on the scooters. But
Yeah, thank you for the question. It has come up during the community engagements in this project and other projects, that the speed differential and the quietness of them can be surprising. It's, I believe, as part of the, I was going to say the bylaw, but I'm not sure if it's in the bylaw right now. Courtesy right now, at least, hopefully someone can correct me, is to ring the bell or something when you're coming up behind someone to let them know that you're coming, essentially, and not just surprise them by blowing by next to them.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm used to having a bell come up behind me, and these scooters are hitting 40 kilometers an hour. What's the matter? They're fast, yeah. Anyways, thank you. It looks like they'll be walking for a while.
Are there any other questions from members of the committee or online? I see none. Are there any members of the public who would like to make their own presentation on the 2023 Transportation Master Plan? Yep. There is. Please come to the mic and give your name. A reminder, you have 5 minutes.
My name is Devin Bone. I own Hickory Street. We're a small restaurant in downtown Lethbridge. I've seen many of you in there. Thank you. I had a very exciting read of the Transportation Master Plan over the last few days. That is a boring document, but thank you, because it is a beast of a document and it's important. It's nice to see where the city of Lethbridge is planning to go with things. I think it's great, and I understand that you have to build an infrastructure. I understand this. I'm coming to you as a small business owner who has been hit pretty hard in the last few months, and I thank Councillor Carlson for the comment that each of these sections that are coming up in the Transportation Master Plan will be brought before council before anything is done. I appreciate that. But I'm coming to you as a small business owner who's barely kept her head above water since she opened in April, because the construction around downtown has almost tanked, I would say, the majority of your businesses downtown. So I like the bike lanes. I like these things. These are great. We need these. But they will have nowhere to go if your businesses go under. So I'm here to tell you that we felt blindsided as business owners. I think it's important, as you sit in these seats, to remember that the constituents and the taxpayers, you owe us some explanations about things. And I think it would be lovely if we could all sit in council meetings, but I'm not the only business owner who spends 100 hours a week in her business and then has to go home and still take care of her family. I cannot sit in these council meetings and learn everything. I wish I could, because I would. But I feel, as a business owner, that you guys owed something to your constituents to say, hey, heads up, we're about to take all the construction and put it all downtown, surround your businesses, and then you're going to field calls from people saying, I'm not coming downtown. So I can't tell you how many hundreds of calls we received saying,
we love you, but we're not coming downtown. And my response was, if you love us, you have to come, because when the construction's over, I may not be here. And this is a concern of hundreds of businesses, not just me. So my plea as a business owner is, as you move forward on this transportation master plan, please seriously consider the businesses that you're impacting. It is a day-to-day grind for us. Some of us can't keep our heads above water if we don't have customers in the door. If we had had a heads up as downtown businesses, we could have planned. So we could have planned for sales, we could have planned more online strategic moves. From all the businesses I've talked to, we were blindsided. So if I missed something, and we all missed something, that's on us, but I don't think that's the case here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any other member of the public who would like to make a presentation? Please keep it to 5 minutes. Thank you very much. Again, give your name.
Jacobus van der Wielen. I like really that we can do biking here in the city. The only drawback is it's not safe. Okay, I don't know if the city council ever take a bike and go on Mermengraaf Drive and go on a bike path. How dangerous, how real dangerous it is. And not just there. You have a bike road with green lines on it. Okay, and if I would have take my grandkids on there, I have to drive in front and tell them where all the holes are. Okay, it's a shame for a city like this cannot keep the bike paths safe for the kids and for old people. And I think it is time, okay, with all the bikes what are coming in more and more, because people enjoy it, okay, because it is a beautiful city to drive around in, that we have to make it safe. And I believe the city council should take a bike, okay, and go at least twice a year around. And not just on the bike paths, but on the road too, how unsafe it is. And I really hope that the city can do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your presentation. And one more time, is there anyone else who would like to make a 5-minute presentation or less to the Transportation Master Plan? Oh, we do have Councillor Parker. You have a question?
Thank you. Thank
or
you.
Response?
Thank you very much, and I apologize. I had to step out there for a few seconds there, so it may have been answered. In regards to bike lanes, that seems to be the talk since they've started up and all that. 2 questions I'm hearing in the community is, first of all, snow removal, especially with the new waivers removing snow and all that. Do you have a plan for snow removal if it does become an issue? Obviously, it will become an issue. We've been fortunate to date, but go ahead.
Thank you for the question. And yes, we do have a plan for snow removal on all bike lanes, including this separated, dedicated bike lane on 4th Avenue, 7th Street. The 4th Avenue, 7th Street is the first dedicated, separated bike cycling lane in the city. So this is the first time, so we're quite cautious on making sure we can maintain it properly. We're going to maintain it with a skid steer, basically a bobcat with a snow bucket and a blade on it. We've also ordered a snow blower that should be early in 2024. A snow blower can load directly into a truck, and all of the downtown is a priority 1 snow removal. So the cycling lanes would also maintain priority 1 snow removal on those. I'll give you some of the other cycling lanes. 7th Avenue, we do special work on 4th Avenue, 7th Avenue South, the cycling lanes there. 13th Street's another cycling lane where we plow and keep that one clear, just like the adjacent roadway. So if you're driving, you should have the same service level as the cycling. So I think somebody asked about usage, and so 7th Avenue is our longest history cycling corridor. We've got between a 400% and I think it's a 1,600%, 4-time increase to 16-time increase in traveling usage by the cycling public. So When we build it, they do increase. 7th Avenue is a classic example. So we hope the same thing happens with the 4th Avenue, 7th Street cycling lanes. Right now, there's not high usage, but we're planning on maintaining it just like the adjacent roadway.
And I appreciate, you kind of opened yourself up here to that when you use percentages, it's kind of a misleading number here. So, if you go from one person using the bike up to 10 people using the bike, that's 1,000% increase, right? But at the end of the day, it's only 10 people using a bike for something that takes a huge capital cost. Obviously, you're going to hopefully provide us some numbers in regards to what the true usage is going to be with these new areas over the next months. Actually, give it a year because you're going to need 4 seasons. Are you going to give us, percentages are good, but actual numbers are more important?
And yeah, actual numbers. We could give you the actual numbers on 7th Avenue Bike Boulevard because we did a pre-count, and we're going to do the same thing on 4th Avenue Cycling Boulevard. Usually we track that once a year. So we track the increase in percentage once a year as well.
Okay. And thank you. And my last question is, the lady from Hickory Street, congratulations on a successful business venture. She represents a lot of people and a lot of concerns that happened in the community over the last few months in regards to notice, in regards to, did we do something wrong on our side? In hindsight, maybe you can explain exactly how we did do it and what did we learn from it in regards to how we communicated, how we went about this.
Mr. Sanchez will take that.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks for the question. And we have also here Bryce Dudley. He was the person in charge of the project from the transportation team. We were talking a little bit about the work that was done in this particular project. It's a combination of many different activities that took place. There was some work done prior to the project. During the functional planning, Mr. Ahmed explained that that was communicated at the time, and before the project, this particular project started, the contractor was doing or deliver letters to all the business, and Mr. Dudley also went door to door in some cases to talk to the business and explain the project. This project was not only about bike lanes, but it's also about water main break lines. It was about transportation. What we're trying to do is sometimes we try to delay projects in order to do the work once and not go back and do this year a transportation. And a few years down the road, then we need to do a water line and we're going to undo the work that we do. But sometimes we can postpone as much as we can. There were some pipes that needed to be worked on, and there were some water main breaks that required the work to happen. We did some changes through the project as well, based on the consultation with business. Of course, there is always an opportunity to do better and to learn, and this is what we were trying to do along the project. We were providing, in some cases, free parking to allow or to compensate for some of the inconvenience. In other areas, we delayed the closure after consultation with different businesses. But it's a work in progress that we're going to do for next events and try to communicate as much as we can. We did it in this time. We actually had a staff that was dedicated to go door to door and to talk to businesses and try to provide options to the work that was going to happen in the following month.
And I appreciate that, and hopefully we're better moving forward. We're always trying to get better. But I can tell you that I heard it loud and clear from businesses that they weren't given the notice, and they understood the inconvenience. They understood it, and they understand that's part of, your, just like in front of your house, so your road gets ripped up, water mains get removed. It's part of just evergreening, keeping things going and all that. But in this one, it just felt like it got, for lack of a word, blindsided on it, and hopefully you heard it loud and clear for us moving forward. And I know, Mr. Sanchez, your department's trying your best, but I'm hearing two sides here, and so I think it's just hopefully we can learn from it and improve on what we've had. Thank you.
Councillor Dodick.
What?
Oh. Mayor Higgins, sorry.
I was a little confused too, I guess, sitting in this chair. No, thank you, Councillor Parker. I had many of these questions as I go through the same thing. I've received numerous calls, and I know I used to have a business in the downtown area, and I know that this probably would have sank my business. And so I appreciate coming forward and speaking on behalf of businesses, because it's something definitely was a concern. My question would be to Mr. City Manager as designate. I see a lot of work when you travel in other communities that work around the clock And I know that there's an issue with noise bylaws, but I'm looking at the downtown on something that has got as many businesses as they do, and when we go in there, I know I've been down there, work started at 8 o'clock, whatever, and ended at 3:30 or 4 o'clock. If this was to be done, when we put out the contract for this, or the notice for work, could we not do this 3 times as fast by having round-clock work? Is that impossible? Is it staffing? Can you help me understand why we don't do more of this in our community?
Yes, I can start answering this, and if there is any other comment by Mr. Yule. The main factor that we have here is cost. Is when you're trying to go 24/7 or even going during a different shift for workers, then the cost for the projects will significantly escalate, and they will be way more expensive. We're just trying to provide the work in a way that we're still cost effective and we can minimize the disruption as much as we can. And I think that will be, for me, the main criteria or priority. Darwin, I don't know if there is anything else you want to add regarding this.
Sure. I'll clarify the existing noise bylaw, and we have had city manager approval to exceed that. 43rd Street South, for example, when we did construction along there adjacent to a residential area. The bylaw right now, I think, is 7 in the morning till 9 at night. So it's a fairly good long time frame that contractors can work in there. Overnight hours, people asked about, well, when we're doing bridge work in the valley, why don't we do 24-hour? That's what Mr. Sanchez talked about. That's a cost issue, but we can look at that when you can scrunch it down into a tighter time frame, but it'll also cost more money because of working nighttime hours. But we can consider that, even in the downtown, we can consider working 24-hour. Cost-wise will be more expensive, but then it'll be quicker, and then the city manager can sign that off as a noise bylaw exemption.
And just to add to that, I guess in closing, I want to make sure that, I mean, there's always going to be issues coming along, but I just want to make sure that we've learned from this. We could say that next time something like this happens, we're going to probably look at it in a different way. Is that fair to say?
I will say it's fair to say. I also want to make sure we acknowledge at the same time there is always opportunity and room for improvement, and I will start saying that. We also did receive quite a few, and I just don't want to focus on one side only, but we received emails from other businesses that they felt that this was properly done and affected their business, no doubt, but they felt that the team that was working was also open to look at different options, and we are going to do that. We're going to continue to see how we can minimize the impact of the work that we do. And again, room for improvement, we always will do lessons learned and try to improve for the next go round when we do different projects across the community.
Excellent. And if I can have one last question, is that all right? About the bike paths and the cleaning, we know that there's a way to do this, and of course we're going to get, it sounds like an additional, a snow plow or something for the front of a skid steer. Now, although we'd have the equipment, is this quite the extended task to do this as opposed to previously windrowing stuff? It's a very different task. So operationally, so not just the capital costs, operationally, this is going to be significantly higher. Is that fair to say? Yes. Okay. No, that's good enough. And maybe if some of these numbers we can get, because it's I'd just like to know a little bit more about that. So thank you.
Councillor Crowson.
Thank you, Chair. To the city manager or designate, are there certain roads in Lethbridge where it is illegal to bike for people's safety? That's the one I was alluding to. I don't believe it is possible or legal to actually bike on McGrath Drive, is it?
The only 2 roads are McGrath Drive, you're correct, and Whoop Up Drive as well, because we've built dedicated cycling lanes right adjacent to both. So the options are there for someone to walk or to bike on both of those routes.
So recognizing that it's not safe, those are the 2 roads you should not have bikes on. Thank you, Chair.
Do I have any other questions from the committee? Okay. So we don't have any other members of the public? I think you've already had your 5 minutes, sorry. Thank you. This is on the transportation? Okay. State your name and come forward.
My name, for those who don't know me, is Dale Lear, and I just want to make a quick comment that I think there's a point that's being a little bit overlooked here, and that's planning and coordination. Now, there's no doubt that this work needed to be done, or at least most of it, but the point is coordinating with the affected businesses, finding the best time of the year to do this work. All the communication in the world is great, but not if it comes out the day before they start digging. The work to prepare for this work had to happen months in advance so that the businesses could anticipate, plan. I mean, this hit those businesses at the worst time of the year, their busiest season, without notice, and here they are caught flat when they've already spent a lot of their funds and resources to stock up for the fall season, for Christmas, and now all of a sudden the revenue dries up from under them. So I'm just saying that even though we have situations where there's essential work that needs to be done, proper planning, coordination, communication can help relieve that burden. So anyway, maybe that's been inferred or implied in the other discussions here, but I just wanted to make it explicit. That's where a lot of the shortfall seems to have come up. Thank you.
Thanks for your time. Is there another member of the public who wants to comment? I see none. I also see Councillor Crowson.
Thank you again, Chair. So again, to the city manager or designate, likely Mr. Sanchez or his department, we do have the Heart of Our City Advisory Committee, which is, there are business members, et cetera. Does the downtown BRZ sit on that committee? And was the Heart of Our City involved in helping to plan when some of this would happen and help with some of the communication?
Yes, thanks for the question. You are 100% correct. Both the Heart of Our City and the BRZ were involved, and that was part of, those were some of the stakeholders that were included during the whole process in the construction. They are separate committees, the Heart of Our City and the BRZ, and staff from transportation, communications, and different departments within the city, I believe also from Opportunity Lethbridge, were involved in the conversation with these stakeholders. And the changes that happened during the process of the project were also done in consultation with these two groups.
Okay, so while there's always room for improvement, there were many groups involved in the consultation.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
All right, no other questions from the committee? I see none. I have a resolution from Councillor Carlson. Be it resolved that the Assets and Infrastructure Standing Policy Committee recommends that City Council, 1, adopt the 2023 Transportation Master Plan as an Attachment 1 in principle to provide direction for the continued development of transportation networks and programs in the city, as well as to provide access to transportation funding sources that require a Transportation Master Plan, and 2, direct administration to return to the City Council through the Economic and Finance Standing Policy Committee for approval of any of the objectives identified in the 2023 Transportation Master Plan as follows. A, capital projects to be submitted to Future Capital Improvement Program, CIP, deliberations, and B, initiatives requiring operating budget changes to be submitted to future operating budget deliberations. Councillor Carlson.
Well, thank you, Chair Campbell. Appreciate all the work that's been done on this over the many years we've been working on this. I think there's been excellent work gone into it, excellent consultation. I do appreciate also the fact that members of the public came down and had this opportunity to speak to some of their concerns. Hopefully we've tried to answer some of those. I think we've learned from mistakes in the past. We've tried to do better. I'm not sure exactly if we went door to door, I'm not sure how much even better we can be, but maybe there is an opportunity for learning, and I hope our team will take that into consideration. I do hope my colleagues will forward this on to Council for Council's consideration, and I'll call for the vote.
Any other debate? I see none. Question's been called. All in favor? All right, that passes unanimously. Moving along to 5.3, Ross Kilgore, Senior Community Planner, regarding the Land Use Bylaw Renewal Project Update. Mr. Kilgore, welcome.
Thank you, and good afternoon, members of SPC. Thank you for having me here today to provide you with a project update on the Land Use Bylaw Renewal project. Next slide, please. So I'll start off with kind of an abridged version of the project background, just to refresh your mind on how this project got started. And then we'll take a look at just the overall project timeline over the 3 years. Then I'll get to the main part of the presentation, which is about all the activity that's been completed since I was last here in July. And then we'll finish up with just some brief notes on what to expect in the next few months. Next slide, please. So, of course, members of council are familiar with the land use bylaw, but just for any members of the public watching, to give a bit of background, the land use bylaw is really the development rule book for the whole city. So I kind of like to think of it as the DNA of Lethbridge's built environment. You can see on this map here on the slide all the current land use districts or zones color coded here. So things like downtown commercial, heavy industrial, low density residential, and so on. The land use bylaw is the document that establishes all of those land use districts and defines which uses are allowable in each of those districts. So it's an important document, and our current one has been incrementally updated over the years from one that was originally created in 1986, so it's almost 40 years old. So this project is really an opportunity to take a holistic view at the purpose of the land use bylaw and come up with a new one from scratch for the first time in nearly 40 years. Next slide, please. So the project's really a combination of two decisions made by council. The first one shown on this slide is from the operating budget, where this initiative was approved to create a new land use bylaw. And then on the next slide, we can see a decision made by council last November to direct us to look at social uses as a priority. So the potential to make changes to the current land use bylaw around social uses, and I'll get into some more detail on that later in the presentation. But essentially this direction from council would be implemented through phase one of the land use bylaw renewal project. Next slide, please. So the land use bylaw is obviously a very sort of technical, esoteric document. It's the kind of thing where members of the public might take a look at it and just think it's very, dry and boring. So really what we're trying to do through this project is to find ways to engage with people in a way that's relatable to their daily lives and their values and what matters to them. And so the diagram here really just kind of illustrates that. The words on the leaves are the things that people see in their everyday lives and probably care quite a bit about, like housing affordability, for example. But the bit they maybe don't see every day that's below the surface there, the roots of the plant, is really where we live with the land use bylaw and all the regulations in there. What we see above ground is what's produced by those regulations. And so we're trying to engage throughout this project in a way where we talk to people about the things that they care about and their vision for their neighbourhood and their city in the future. And then it's our job to kind of take that away and figure out the regulations that will deliver that for them. Next slide, please. So this is a timeline for the overall project, which is about 3 years, so wrapping up late 2026. And so that end product would be a draft new land use bylaw that would be brought to council through a public hearing process. Next slide, please. The current phase we're on here is phase one, which is focused on social uses, as I mentioned, according to that direction from council. And so we'll get into that in a little more detail now. Next slide, please. So this is the question that is really guiding all of our engagement through phase one of this project. And so everything that we've been talking to the public about is designed to help us answer this question. Next slide, please. So what do we mean when we talk about social uses? That was the term that was used in council's direction, and we think it's quite a nice kind of basket term for what we're talking about. So you can see listed here the 7 use definitions that we have in our current land use bylaw that we're talking about when we talk about social uses. And really they fall into 2 categories. So it's social service facilities like drop-in centres, food banks, resource centres and soup kitchens. And then types of housing that have a social support component to help the residents function and live in an independent way. So that's shelters, supportive housing, group homes. Those are all the current definitions that we have. And so that's really the uses that we're looking at through phase one of this project. Next slide, please. This diagram is called the housing continuum. There's a few slightly different versions of it out there, but this is the one used by CMHC, so it's the one we've been using. You can see highlighted on the left the types of housing that have a social support component that we're looking at through this first phase of the project. On the right, the ones that aren't highlighted, those are the types of housing that we'll be looking at through phase two of the project when we look at essentially everything else apart from social uses. So one really useful metaphor that I heard for this housing continuum idea is that it's like stepping stones across a river. And so if you don't have enough capacity in one type of housing, that's akin to someone being stuck on one stepping stone and not being able to move forward. And that, of course, can result in other people backing up behind you and not being able to make progress. So, for example, if we don't have enough supportive housing capacity in the city, then people may be stuck in shelters, for example, or in homelessness, not having a place to kind of move forward into. So it's important that we make sure that we have enough capacity at all levels of the housing continuum. Next slide, please. So what we're looking at in regards to social uses is really the use definitions, how these uses are separated and defined, where they're allowed in terms of the different land use districts, and where they are allowed, if they're permitted uses or discretionary uses, and then any other types of guidance or regulations in the land use bylaw around those. So if we go to the next slide, we'll see an overview of the current situation. So on the first column on the left, you can see all of the standard land use districts in our current land use bylaw that allow one of the social uses. And then along the top, we can see the column headers have the current definitions like drop-in centres and food banks and so on. So that bluey, greeny colour of dot indicates a discretionary use, and then the yellow circle with the P in it indicates a permitted use. So you can see with our current situation, there's only one instance where a social use is permitted, and that's the group homes in the RLF district. However, the RLF district is not currently being used for any property in the city, and so essentially all our social uses are currently discretionary. And so what that means is that it's harder for these uses to be approved. It's up to the discretion of the development officer whether or not the development permit is issued, and then that can be appealed as well and then overturned on appeal. So we frequently see that happens, and with this current situation that we have today shown in this slide, that gives us the results that we get today, where it's very hard to have these uses approved. Next slide, please. So turning from the current situation to what we've done in the last few months since we were here in July, the main activity we've been doing is the public engagement. So this slide just gives you a bit of a high-level overview of all the activity we've been doing. So we started off with a public project launch on August 23rd. We issued a press release and had quite a bunch of media interest, which was great. And a shout out to Caitlin Barr and Sarah Peters from Communications and Engagement for all their help with that. And they've done a great job getting ads out in social media and in the Herald and so on as well to build awareness. So as of when these materials were submitted for this presentation, November 3rd, we had 6,100 visits to the project website on getinvolvedlethbridge.ca. We launched 2 initial online surveys when we launched the project. One was about engagement preferences, so that was just asking people how they want to be engaged and involved in the project overall over the next 3 years. We also had a specific online survey about housing and social services, and we had 831 of those completed, which is a really phenomenal number compared to any other project that I've worked on for the city. So we were extremely pleased with that. Our stretch goal was really 500, so to see it blow past that really showed the level of community interest in this topic, and I think indicates that people do want to see some change on this. We also launched four online videos. So 2 were just about the project as a whole and introducing people to the land use bylaw and what the project means. The other 2 were called Lethbridge Stories. So that was about people that are typically using some of these social uses today. Those videos have had around 420 views as of today. We also published some information documents about the project. So last time I was here, we spoke about the project primer document that was, I believe, in a draft form at that time. This committee advised us to create a shorter version of that as well, sort of an executive summary version. So we did that. So there's the 16-page version and the 3 or 4-page version available on the project website as well. We also created the Decoding Social Uses document, which I'll speak about. And then all these documents had a total of 514 downloads. So again, really great interest from the public. Next slide, please. So one of the things we did was share information with the public to allow them to get some more insight into the topic. The main aspect of this was the Decoding Social Uses document you see here. So what we were trying to do here was really 2 things. One was to be transparent with the public and share all of our best practice and background research on this topic so that they've got the same information we do. And the second thing is really just to equip public who are interested in this topic to be ready to take part in the further public engagement and to get more out of it. We also produced the Lethbridge Stories document you can see on the right, as well as the 2 videos. And the purpose of these was really to create these personas of people in Lethbridge using different types of social use and to try and help humanize that discussion around these uses because they can become quite abstract discussions, and so it's important for us to remember that we're talking about real people. Next slide, please. The next thing we did was to try and raise awareness about the project. So we wanted to reach people who wouldn't necessarily always be available or interested in coming down to City Hall for an open house or a workshop. And so we went out to try and meet people where they're at, to let them know that the project's happening, direct them to the online survey and so on. So we went to 10 different locations around the city. We tried to reach a variety of different types of locations as well. So we went to the farmers market, went to 2 different powwows. We went to Walmart on the south side, No Frills on the north side, 2 different seniors centres, 2 food banks, and Crossings Library as well. So the format would really be setting up, like you see in the images here, with some information for people, some iPads for them to fill out surveys, some paper copies and so on, and directing them to the website as well. Next slide, please. We also held individual meetings with a number of organizations. This came from the initial survey about how people wanted to be involved in the project. We asked people if they wanted to have an individual meeting with us, and so most of these meetings came from that. So in total, there were 18 organization meetings that we held. So there's 16 shown on the slide. And since this was submitted, a further 2. So the YWCA on November 16th and London Road Neighbourhood Association on November 21st. Next slide, please. We also hosted some in-person events where we invited people and set up the events. So we held in-person workshops on this topic on October 3rd and 4th here at City Hall. Each workshop was 2 hours long, so it was quite a commitment from people to attend. One of those sessions was in the evening as well. We wanted to try and make it convenient for people to attend, even if they were working different hours of the day. So that was really an opportunity for more in-depth discussion, getting deeper into the topic rather than the online surveys, which were 10, 15 minutes to fill out. The people who attended were a mixture of members of the public, staff from some social service organisations. We had rental landlords, developers, so it was quite a nice mixture. We also took part in the community conversation event on October 23rd at the NMAX. So there were 369 people attended that, and we had some really good interest from that as well. And then on November 15th, which was after this material was submitted, we held an open house at CASA, which is where we shared for the first time with the public what we were thinking in terms of our draft recommendations to council for changes to the social uses regulations. We also had an online version of that survey from that open house, so anyone who couldn't attend the open house could still view the online boards and fill out the survey online, and that was available till November 24th. So currently, our engagement consultants are analysing and summarising all of these engagement results and creating a what we heard report, which would be submitted to council as part of the amending bylaw for the land use bylaw on the social uses topic. So that would come to council for that public hearing. Next slide, please. So this just gives an overview of the way that all the elements of the engagement for phase one have fit together. So we started with that really high level input from the surveys that was quite general and broad, and obviously had a very large number of people, over 800 surveys completed for that. Simultaneously with that, we were raising awareness of the project with the pop-ups at 10 locations, which reached hundreds of people. And then the 18 meetings with organizations, civil, industry, non-profits, and neighborhoods, and so on. Reached over 300 people with community conversation event. And then when we get to stage 3, we're really getting into the more detailed conversations with people through the workshops. And so based on all of that input, we did create draft recommendations for changes to the current land use bylaw on social uses. And so those are based on council's direction from November 8th, 2022, the public engagement, what we've heard from people, best practice research as well, which is captured in the Decoding Social Uses document. And then we're now, following that open house, we're now working on revising those draft recommendations based on the feedback we've had from the public. And so we'll be preparing finalized versions of those recommendations. Next slide, please. And so this brings us to our next steps. So we're working on finalizing those recommendations, and we'll be submitting those as an amending bylaw to Land Use Bylaw 6300. We anticipate submitting that around early February, which would get us to a first reading February 27th and public hearing on March 26th. Simultaneously with that, we're working on the phase 2 public engagement plan, which, as we discussed with SPC before, will come to council before we begin the phase 2 engagement. So we're planning to bring that to this SPC on March 7th and then to council April 9th to get your input on how we engage on phase 2. We're also at the moment working on the phase 2 decoding papers. So for phase 1, we just had the one decoding social uses, but for phase 2, with it being much broader, looking at all the other topics, we're going to have a whole series of decoding papers. So decoding downtown, decoding parking, decoding the local economy, and so on. We have 3 University of Lethbridge students working with us on those as an applied study, which has been great. And we anticipate starting phase 2 engagement around April 2024, so just after the public hearing from phase 1. And next slide. So that concludes my presentation. Be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kilgore. Incredible amount of work that you and your staff have put together. It's and you sure can't say you didn't try to get some engagement with the public. So that's impressive to go all through the city and get feedback. And I know that you're still working on all of the recommendations and debriefing and all the information you had. But I'm just curious at this point, for you, you've been doing this for a while, but when you saw the data and the feedback, were there some pleasant surprises amongst the public? And on the other side of things, were there some things that said, never thought of that? If you got some general thoughts?
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Yes, I'd say from the initial survey on social uses, where we had that 800 plus responses, I was really pleasantly surprised with how much people wanted to see things change. Because I think my preconception, just based on the past few years of experience, was that probably most people wouldn't want anything to change, but I think maybe the community's reached a point where we're people are fed up of seeing these problems and they want something done to address them. So I think that was a really pleasant surprise. Obviously, people differed in how they wanted things to change, but I think there was almost universally a desire to, or a recognition that we need to see more facilities built and, giving people places to live and so on. I think there was a bit of a divide between people who wanted to see more of these types of uses downtown or not downtown or different parts of the city. So again, that's understandable. But the difficult part then is translating that into something that's fair and that works to kind of address the issues that we've seen the last few years in trying to get these things approved. So that was certainly a pleasant surprise for me, and I do think there's that desire now to see something happen.
Other members of the committee for questions? Councillor Middleton Hope.
Thank you. And as always, Mr. Kilgore, the presentation is fulsome, direct, and I appreciate that. I do have a question that arose as a result of a meeting that I had with two businesses recently in which they expressed concerns about the contents of the report. And I certainly reflect back on our level of consultation with areas of our city, which includes businesses. But the two businesses that these two individuals represented did not feel that they were adequately consulted. So my question, and they are two of many, I certainly agree with that. The data that you've provided is very quantitative in nature, so I'm interested in, have we conducted a qualitative analysis of this feedback? Are we getting to the minutia of the detail of businesses that feel adversely impacted by some of the changes that we're proposing? Are we addressing that with these businesses? The comment that and again, I do not want to inflame it and suggest that this is representative of a large number of people, because I haven't spoken to a large number of people. But the two people that I have in particular spoken to were concerned about a soup kitchen as an example popping up beside them, because we have done something to the extent of combining a number of food services operations into kind of a one category that is now a permitted use as opposed to any other type of use. I'm wondering if you could provide me with some insights into what your observations are around that, what kind of quantitative and qualitative analysis that we've conducted, and how we might respond more favorably to business owners that have expressed those types of concerns.
Thank you, Councillor Middleton Hope. So we did meet with some business representation organizations, so the Downtown BRZ and Hartford City Committee, for example. We are meeting again with Downtown BRZ, I believe, next week to talk to them some more about their concerns. I need to avoid getting into too many specifics to avoid prejudicing the public hearing, but certainly what we're doing following the feedback that we received from the public, including downtown organizations, is looking at any potential changes to our draft recommendations to respond to those concerns. In terms of the details of how we analyze the feedback and so on, I would invite our consultants as well who are online if they would like to also comment on that. So we have Beth Sanders of Populous and Janusz Dishband from GSA if they would like to add anything.
I see Mr. Sanchez wants to respond.
Just to add a comment to the extent of the engagement that has been completed, and I just want to make clear that the engagement started a while ago, and I think this is one of the projects where we have done a vast engagement with different stakeholders, and there is still an opportunity. So if there is a concern that is still present by any of the business, they are more than welcome to reach out to the project team, and they can actually provide any other feedback. And even there is a point where we are trying to go above and beyond, and I think there was one slide where we did meetings with particular stakeholders that requested this, and that's what we were trying to do, to put the offer there we're here to talk. This is the time to talk about all the changes that the team is working on. And if there is still any questions that they might have, please feel more than welcome to reach out to Ross or Genesis, who are leading this project from the planning group.
Councillor Carlson.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I'm pushing all the wrong buttons. Now I found it. Thank you for that. I wasn't sure if the consultants were going to respond to that or not.
Yes, I see a hand up. Go ahead.
Okay, then I will wait.
Thank you. I'm happy to support you in your conversation. Councillor Middleton Hope's question through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. The analysis is qualitative. So that's a simple answer to that question. You're going to see the results of that analysis in the What We Heard report that will be coming in the future when Mr. Kilgore and Ms. Molesky are bringing that bylaw amendment to council for a public hearing. We're just finishing up that analysis right now because, as Mr. Kilgore said, there was a survey that just completed on November 24th. So we're just finalizing all that. But all of that data and that sense of what it is that people are saying is not in front of you right now, but it will be when this matter is next in front of you. So just wanted to offer that up. And if there's anything else I can assist with, both in terms of the engagement process or any questions about analysis or the kinds of sentiments that are coming through, I'm happy to support you in those deliberations.
Did you want to respond to that, Mr. Middleton Hope?
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. No, thank you very much for that. I appreciate it, and that's a much more fulsome answer. I look forward to the analysis.
And back to Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question, and I guess the analysis hasn't quite been done. All the nitty-gritty, I guess, needs to come forward. But I'm just wondering where the thought process is at present. When I looked at the land use districts, there we go, mouth is working, and what is permitted and what is discretionary, yeah, it was kind of shocking to me to see the one yellow. Is the thought process at the moment more permitted uses in our current land use districts, fewer land use districts in general, or a combination? And maybe you don't have that answer right now, but when I look at how many land uses we have and how challenging we make it for these social uses to be permitted anywhere, and so it always causes consternation and uproar. What are the thoughts about how to tackle that?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Carlson. So the main direction that we've been following is from Council's November 8th, 2022 resolution, which was to tell us to look at looking at making these uses permitted with required criteria such as buffer distances from schools and playgrounds, B, exploring allowing them in more land use districts within the land use bylaw, and C, it was about public engagement. And so that's really been driving the engagement and the decision making in terms of our recommendations. And so yes, we have been looking at whether to allow them in more districts, whether to make them permitted rather than discretionary in some districts. But also what we've found is that even with them being discretionary right now, there's not a lot of guidance or other regulations in there in terms of when they are acceptable and when they should be approved as a discretionary use. And so we hope to address that as well for where they do stay discretionary. We shared with the public on November 15th at the open house, the board's giving an overview of our draft recommendations, and that's still available on the Get Involved Lethbridge site. But certainly we're looking at making a few changes to that based on the feedback from the open house and the following online survey.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Kilgore. So I understood you're following council's direction, which I appreciate. But I'm wondering about best practices. I think maybe I'm putting Councillor Crowson on the spot here, but Belinda, you and I have had some chats in the past about other jurisdictions around the world who have much fewer land use districts rather than what do we have here? Like 11, I don't know. I just did a quick glance. Some entire countries have 3 for an entire country. So I'm just wondering, do we break things up far too much? Are there best practices we should be following? And Belinda, sorry for referencing you, but it was you and I that I think were talking.
I know what's been discussed around this different places. If you look like a place called like Houston, Houston's one of the largest communities in North America that doesn't do zoning. About 30% of their community is covered by what we might consider zoning, but most of it does not. And even the areas that have it, they have to renew it every 10, 20 years. So very different way. Houston went in a completely different way than the rest of North America. If you look at some place like Japan, zoning is actually done federally. And throughout the entire country, they have only, I think, 12 zones for the entire country. And they can build things incredibly quickly, both in Houston and in Japan, because of what they have. And in Alberta, I know when we had the ministers here, it was one of the questions we asked. There's a concern that communities aren't changing zoning to support housing. The province can step in and set the zoning across the entire province if they want. Like, that is an option that is always in their bailiwick, and people can discuss whether or not they like that. So there certainly are other options, and what we're seeing in many communities, and it sounds weird, but to support social programs or social use, they're really looking at the parking stuff, and I know Mr. Kilgore is very well aware of that. Some of those things are being done. So if you actually follow some of the things on social media, it's amazing how many places are just getting rid of parking requirements across North America, are updating their zoning. This is something that every day you're hearing something new that cities are doing, and Mr. Kilgore will be much more up on it than I am, certainly. But it is something that is being discussed among city councils like us across North America all the time now.
Sanchez wants to weigh in. Sorry, Mr. Carlson, Mr. Sanchez.
Yes, just I was talking to the team behind me, and I just want to remind council that phase 1 is mostly directed to social uses. What we're talking here in terms of how many districts, what other changes need to be done to the land use bylaw, that's part of phase 2, which is what it will start right after we finish with phase 1. So yes, the short answer is yes, we're going to be looking into that, and that's part of phase 2 of this project.
Excellent. Thank you.
Any other questions, Councillor Carlson? No, you're good. Okay. Mayor Higgin.
All right, a question that I've received, time's up? All right. I've been asked quite often is through this process, and of course, and I'm sure you've heard it in any of your engagement sessions of the social side of things, and does this mean council's not going to have any say? We're going to be able to put and I'm putting out what I've heard, an SES is going to go here, and there's nothing that council's going to be able to say. I know it's a pretty big statement. Is it just going to be planning that's going to be able to say, okay, this is the only zone we've got? Sorry, council, you've got nothing to do with this. Concerning to me, help me walk through this, that is not the case.
Thank you, Mayor Hagan, for the question. So if a use is made permitted, that means that if someone applies for a development permit for that use and they meet all the requirements in the land use bylaw, then it has to be approved. The permit has to be issued, and it can't be appealed except in very narrow circumstances to do with the interpretation of the use not being correct. If it's a discretionary use, then the development officer has discretion whether or not to approve it, and then it can be appealed even if it is approved. So the draft proposals that we shared at the open house talked about creating a use definition for supervised consumption site, and the reason for that was because we've heard so much concern from the community about that type of use, based on the experience that we had when we had an SES. We felt that the idea of an SCS was complicating other types of social uses where people were afraid that that would involve an SCS even if it wouldn't. So our idea there was to create a use definition for supervised consumption site so that it's very clear that unless someone's applying for a permit for a supervised consumption site, then that is not what is being proposed. And so the proposal that we shared at the Open House was to create that use definition and make it only allowable in one district, which was the public building district, and make it a discretionary use even there. And the only reason for that one was because the hospital is zoned public building, and we wanted to make sure that we weren't precluding or interfering with any sorts of medical treatment there. So those draft proposals that we shared, there was no proposal to make supervised consumption site a permitted use. In fact, that approach really kind of heavily restricts the potential for a supervised consumption site, because at the moment, if someone applied for one today, it would fall under the definition of a medical and health facility, inpatient and outpatient. That is a use that is allowable in quite a few different districts today. So the proposal, that draft proposal we put forward, would actually heavily restrict the potential for an SCS. The idea there was just to allow us to talk about other types of social use without people fearing that it involves an SCS.
And thank you for that. I think I'm on. Can you hear me? Okay, sorry. And it's not just that. There's many things. There's the NIMBY thing. It comes to a lot of the different social housing that's is brought forward to council, and I think we're seeing now at a federal level of current government. If current government changes, this drive for building and incentives, if you are prepared for this housing. I'm sure you've taken that into account as you're going through this process of what could possibly happen in the future at multiple different political levels, I suppose, and how to make it through there. My biggest concern, I guess, from what I've heard from the community, and this is council, why is council there if you're not going to be able to have any say in if there's something coming forward, if there's some of the social housing, et cetera, coming forward. And what I'm hearing is that may be limited. Council may have a limited amount of engagement there, that it will actually be through the development officer. There's a few different aspects, I guess. If someone needs to rezone, then obviously that comes to council for a public hearing. If they don't need to rezone, but it's already an allowable use where they are, if it's a permitted use, then yes, normally there wouldn't be council involvement in that, other than, of course, passing the bylaw in the first place through a public hearing process to make something a permitted use. And then obviously discretionary use is where it depends on the development officer's discretion, and then it can be appealed and go through subdivision and development appeal board. So this same situation today. There's a lot of permitted uses already throughout the city, so it's same function. Because I just in closing, more of a comment than a question is if there's something approved from a development officer, the development officer isn't getting the call. These people are getting the call. And so this is just something that I just want to be aware of for future. But questions can come at the first or second reading, I suppose. So.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Crowson.
Thank you very much, Chair. I know we want to get into what's going to be in the future bylaw, but that's not what today is about, correct? Today is about explaining the process you've gone for and making sure we understand the process moving forward. This will be coming back for first reading in February, and then people will have a month to read that proposed bylaw, respond to council about the proposed bylaw, come to the hearing in March, and then a decision will be made by council at that time. Is that the process we have moving ahead?
That's correct, Councillor.
Okay, so that is what we're looking at. Here's the process. If this moves forward from this committee, goes forward to council, and they put up their hand and say yes, it's just meaning we're moving to further discussion with the community.
Yes, Councillor, this is just really a project update to periodically update this committee on how the project's going and what we've been up to since we were last here, in this case in July. And so we're really not looking for a decision or anything at the moment. It's just an update for your information.
The minutia comes in March.
Great.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Are there any other questions from members of council? I see none. Are there any members of the public who want to make a presentation regarding the bylaw renewal project? I see none. All right. I have a resolution from Councillor Parker. Be it resolved that the Assets and Infrastructure Standing Policy Committee recommends City Council receive the Land Use Bylaw Renewal Project update for information. Councillor Parker.
Chair Tilger and his team. It's a lot of work to date. And I think the key with there was the question that Councillor Croson said. This is an update. This isn't solidified. People have an opportunity to speak and to have their input on the pros and cons to this these adjustments to the land use bylaw. So I just asked for council support, and I want to thank them for their presentation.
Question's been called. All in favor? All right, that passes. Moving on, next, we have the submission from Lethbridge and District Exhibition, and just to let everyone know that this presentation was given to us at the last City Council, and we all decided that it'd be worth the while to have the public, if they wanted to have any input, this is the place to do that. So, and there are speakers who are signed up to speak, but this will give council right now an opportunity, if you have any other questions, or at least a member of this committee, if you have any questions at this time. I see none. So we'll move right forward to the list of speakers that we have here today. First off, Kevin Farrell and Cindy Bester.
Thank you. Cindy Bester, CEO of the Lethbridge Chamber of Commerce.
That's what it says right there. Yep.
There we go. I want to make sure you're not on record. Ladies and gentlemen of the Standing Policy Committee, I stand before you today to underscore the profound positive economic impact that the Lethbridge and District Exhibition Park has had on our city since its inception of 1897. Over the years, this venue has evolved into a central hub for diverse events, trade shows, and agricultural exhibitions, attracting a substantial influx of visitors from local, regional, national, and international spheres. The heightened foot traffic not only breathes life into local hospitality sector, including hotels, restaurants, and shops, but also generates increased demand for various goods and services, thereby fostering overall economic growth. The events hosted at the Agri-Food Hub play a critical role in job creation, providing valuable employment opportunities for our local workforce. Additionally, the mere presence of the park enhances our city's reputation, potentially attracting businesses, investors to lay roots and grow in our region. In essence, Exhibition Park traditionally serves as a vital economic catalyst, driving growth and prosperity for our city and its residents. However, we find ourselves facing a hurdle. A challenge that's, given the global circumstances of the past 3.5 years, is not entirely unexpected. Last week, we heard Mr. Workington speak about the word commitment. I'd like to add another term to the equation: volunteerism. The leadership of the Lethbridge and District Exhibition Park has exemplified these qualities for more than a century, and the volunteers in the room today and the volunteers that were here last week represent the strength of our community. As a council, you have also demonstrated a commitment to our community, and for that, I commend you. The stakeholders in our community embody the spirit of build local, and this is something we should take pride in. Did businesses in our community benefit financially from this project? Undoubtedly. They did, and so they should, as economic community contributors. It must also be understood that they managed to keep cost overruns for all invested parties at an impressive 7.89%, a notable 7.11% below the 15% industry standard we heard. It is important to note that delays and/or overruns are not uncommon, as seen in other various recent city projects. We've heard about downtown construction today. Our community engages in projects to enhance and improve our city. We invest locally, build locally, and spend locally. Last week, Councillor Campbell expressed a desire to share optimism, a sentiment I wholeheartedly agree with. In the midst of ongoing challenges, optimism should permeate our city and the region as we collectively strive for stabilization. Having spent time in Edmonton in the past month, I sensed a shared optimism. Northern Alberta's heartbeat is energized by Alberta energy, and in southern Alberta, strong Alberta agriculture fuels our pulse. It is interesting to observe that communication seemed lacking between the Lethbridge and District Exhibition Park, City of Lethbridge administration, and City Council. Transparency was stressed in this chamber last week, yet I find it troubling that the community perceives a lack of it. My understanding is Exhibition Park has been communicating with the city since April of 2022. In our count, there have been 16 presentations to date. While I acknowledge that these communications may not have been made public, this issue is not new. The question arises, why is the general communication now portrayed as if parties have been hiding something? I would ask, have all documents been received by all parties involved? I wish to recognize that the province is an essential partner in this relationship. My question is, what is the city doing to strengthen this partnership? How can we bring all parties together to unlock the full potential of the spirit of this project? Last week, there was discussion about the city's due diligence, and I respect that not all details may be shared. However, I request that when completing this due diligence, the city be transparent about running the facility from a city staff perspective versus a private sector perspective. It is crucial to understand how this could affect potential tax rates for citizens you spoke about last week. The Lethbridge Chamber of Commerce has outlined core organizational policies that we believe are pertinent to the situation. Government should not directly compete with private sector. We trust that collaboration between government, community, and industry is the most effective way to increase economic opportunities. Government should engage local stakeholders in meaningful dialogue and consultation on all matters affecting local business. I could go on my policies, but in conclusion, I ask whomever council deems appropriate to review these core organizational policies, which I'll send you, be consulted regarding this project, and that all studies related to this project be completed and presented publicly. All stakeholders deserve answers, or at the very least, an opportunity to engage to ensure the success of this project when council reconvenes on December 12th, 2023. I look forward to the report from the third-party review. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bester.
Thank you.
Up next, we have Dale Lear. And a reminder, the phone will go off at 5 minutes.
Okay, I brought one too, just in case. Anyways, thank you again for having this session today. First, I want to say congratulations to Deputy Mayor Campbell on your appointment to the chair of this committee. I'm sure you'll keep a firm hand on the tiller and keep things tight and focused. So I did, in fact, have some prepared notes today, but yeah, in the interest of brevity, I'm just going to go off script and just work out some things that I scratched down here. First of all, we just heard about optimism. I got to say, I've never met a more optimistic bunch in my life. I mean, if a house burned down, folks here would be saying, oh, isn't it getting warm out? So that's just my observation. Now, I'm a business person, and to me, that means being able to deal with supply and demand. One of the things we have in this community is a high demand for transparency and accountability. Supply, not so much. So this has an impact on confidence by the community. And how does the community actually know it's getting good value for money? This is a very important detail. So where are the metrics for performance? Where is the independent overview that would give the taxpaying public comfort that they're getting good value for money? I don't know. So the issues regarding funding shortfall that we're discussing today is with regards to is in regards to the agri-food trade hub is not unique. We've got a number of issues that we seem to have difficulty, I think, finding the funding to cover. And that goes really across the board. Now, grants aren't the long-term cost of asset ownership. It's the operating costs that get you in the long run. Anybody that's bought a car knows what that's about. So the funding needing to cover these shortfalls is just the tip of the iceberg. Now, if I was your mayor, and I think we're all grateful that I'm not, I would say that it would be of value to undertake, to launch an end-to-end review of the municipal operations, beginning with dusting off that old KPMG report that has some important parts redacted to protect exposure from the prying eyes of the paying public. So I would just say that we need to have a better way of addressing our fiscal situation. As anybody that runs a family budget can tell you, it's important that your income exceeds your expenses. And if that sounds like common sense, it's because it is. So at the end of the day, I would just like to point out, we've heard from time and again people coming forward and extolling the virtues of land sales. But I would put forth that land sales are the crack cocaine of municipal finance. Might give you a short-term boost, but it's an addiction that ultimately becomes unbearable to sustain. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lear. Up next, we have Lane Whipple. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Lane Whipple. Good afternoon. First of all, I'd like to thank Councillor Crowson for allowing this to happen, for suggesting at the last council meeting, and also for Councillor Parker's tough questions at that same meeting. I'm sure you've read my submission, and I have just a couple of other things to add. I ran a successful business for a number of years here in Lethbridge, and I had the good fortune to dig that company out of a deep financial trouble without any help from the city of Lethbridge or any other form of government. I accomplished this by having dedicated staff, treating customers well, competitive pricing, and hard work. A point that I would like to make that I did not mention in my submission is this. I was an avid supporter of the Lethbridge District exhibition for decades. As a matter of fact, I had a former exhibition employee, a former exhibition employee, and I were the first to drop a contract for advertising space on the exhibition grounds. I sponsored more than one of the pavilions that they are now wanting to destroy, as well as I sponsored a portion of the parking lot and a large sign on the corner of 43rd Street and 10th Avenue South. My wife and I also tried to book the Agri-Food Hub and Trade Center for our 50th wedding anniversary this year, but the astronomical cost of the rental and the exhibition's caterer made us search elsewhere for a more reasonably priced venue and food supplier. The price we eventually paid was 1/3 of what the exhibition wanted, and the venue that we rented was every bit as nice as the space at the exhibition. What I'm saying is this: I would support the Lethbridge District exhibition if they had a sound business plan that made sense for our community and were not priced like the venues in larger centers like Calgary and Edmonton. After all, this is Lethbridge, a community that is 1/10 the size of those cities. My question to Mayor and Council and to this committee are, can you please tell me where and how you obtained the information to move forward with the initial funding for this project? And what information are you going to require from the Lethbridge District Exhibition management, staff, and board of directors to approve the additional funding? Will you actually require monthly financial statements or pie-in-the-sky projections? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Whipple. Up next, Aaron Crane.
Okie, and good afternoon. Again, my name is Erin Crane. I'm a CEO for Tourism Lethbridge, and thank you again for this opportunity. I was here last week, and I don't know if you saw me squirming in my chair, but there were a lot of things that I wanted to add to this conversation, so appreciate the chance to bring them forward today. So I did put in a submission that had 3 key points that I wanted to review with you today. The first one is about destination promotion. Right? This is what we do at Tourism Lethbridge. Our strategic plan has a pillar for economic growth. And one of the directives under that pillar is to support the expansion that happened out at the Agri-Food Hub and Trade Center. I also included some work that has been done by our partners at Destinations International with the Community Vitality Wheel. Because one of the reasons that I moved over from economic development to tourism is because I do believe that it all starts with a visit. As you can see on that wheel, if we build a community where people want to visit, we build a community where people want to live. And if we build a community where people want to live, we build a community where people want to work. And if we build a community where people want to work, we're building a community where people want to invest and do business. And if we build a community where people want to invest and do business, guess what? We have built a community where people want to visit. And the cycle continues. And this is what economic development is all about. And this is, again, what we do at Tourism Lethbridge. We tell the positive stories in order to attract new business and new investment here to our community. Which leads me to my next point, which is about economic impact. And Councillor Parker, you had asked these questions, last week, about what that looks like. And so I wanted to assure you that this is a big part of the work that we do. And I included the Tim Hortons Breyer Economic Impact Study because last year, when we hosted that event in March of 2022, we really wanted to understand what the impacts were for major events. And we were so excited when we got that information because you invested $1 million into that. And the return on your investment was $16.8 million. That's a great return on investment. And the new expansion for the Agri-Food Hub and Trade Center will allow us to bring in more of those major events that will continue to grow that economic impact. We also know that this is a long-term strategy to attract this business, right? We are looking at, 3 to 5 years out just for the planning, and the work that we're doing is getting us to that point of attracting it. I did include some numbers there. The work that we have done, even just so far this year, has got us to about $13.5 million that we are estimating could come into our city from the work that we've done. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. That is not, because I do want to be transparent. We've been talking about that a lot today. That's not necessarily all for the Agri-Food Hub and Trade Center. And that's not the work that we do at Tourism Lethbridge. We don't sell for them. We go out and we talk about the community. We find out the interest and we bring that back and we share it with our partners. And it's really up to them to land that business then. I did hear, though, from a few of the businesses or the event planners that we are working with who were really concerned. This news story has gone across the nation. It was picked up by the Globe and Mail. So uncertainty in our market is really difficult. And after going through what the industry went through during the COVID pandemic, uncertainty is a really hard sell at this point. The last thing I want to touch on is exploring options, right? I always tell my team, don't bring me problems, bring me solutions. And I wanted to make sure that, we actually came here with, something that we could potentially look at to help overcome some of these challenges. As Councillors Croson and Campbell mentioned, last week, we have been here before, right? And even Ms. Bester, when she was up here, these have been ongoing challenges, and we want to make sure that we have some ways to address them. Because we do know that we've got some big projects on the horizon in the future that we're also looking at, and I don't think any of us want to be here again. So we have suggested looking at a capital investment fund through a visitor-based assessment. It may not be the best solution, but we do at Tourism Lethbridge believe that it's a good conversation to start. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Crane. Are there any other members of the public who would like to make a presentation? Step forward. Sorry, okay, I saw you first. Go ahead. Step forward, give us your name, please.
Good afternoon. My name's Alf Gurr. I ran a successful business for 25 years in Lethbridge, or I managed a successful business. As I sat at the meeting last week, there was a whole raft of questions that came to mind. First of all, I could tell you what it costs to run my business per day, 365 days of the year. That question was not answered last week. Also, when council backstopped a loan for $17 million for the agri-hub, you went based on the information an accounting firm gave you. So I don't know how the public can hold council responsible for the mess that we're in right now. As far as the costs go for the new agri-hub, I've heard from a lot of friends of mine who had businesses or who ran events at the old pavilion. They're astronomical now to be able to put an event on there. And these are questions that I have for the other presenters maybe today. I also heard there were 200,000 people funneled through the new agri-hub. That is probably correct, because when they gave away free admission to Whoop Up Days, they were funneled through the agri-hub. And those are a few questions that I have today, and I hope to get some answers. Thank you very much.
Next person, step forward and give us your name.
Hi there. Hi, everyone. I'm Bridget Mearns, the Executive Officer of the Building Industry and Land Development Association. And I'm pleased to be here today on their behalf to also provide support for this project. We know that public investment and support of a state-of-art trade and convention center can yield substantial economic, social, cultural benefits for the community and making it a strategic and worthwhile endeavor. I know you know that. You've invested a lot of money in that. You understand how important it is to the community. We've heard how important it is to bringing people to the community. We also understand that the need for council to be stewards of the taxpayers' dollars, and it's important and a vital responsibility. So we appreciate the third-party review. We know that will go a long way to getting confidence back, and that's the word that comes to my mind. It's important that there's confidence from the community, that it's financially accessible to the community, and it supports the community in its operations. What I'd like to propose, or the perspective that I would like to bring to you, is one as a producer of these events that happen at this facility. We are the producers of the Home and Garden and now Leisure Show, and it's important in our community, not necessarily because of what we bring into the community, but it's important for the existing businesses in our community. They don't have the opportunity that's afforded to them in a show like the Home and Garden Leisure Show and have exposure to the number of consumers that happen and the commerce that happens at a show like that. We heard about the confidence that can be eroded when you don't see the support in the community, you don't see the support in City Council, you don't see support in City Administration. So I want to tell you the importance of that. We will have the event on March 2024, and we are hearing some concern from our vendors, do we go into this show? But we are here to tell you this is an important show, it's an important facility, not just because of what it can do, but what it already does. Thank you.
Are there any other members of the public who would like to make a presentation at this time? I see none. I see Councillor Carlson is in the queue. Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure of our process here with council now after speakers. Do we direct questions to the presenters or speakers or just to our administration? I'm not sure how you want to do things.
Let me confer with the clerk.
Thank you.
You can ask administration if they want to answer. Are you looking to ask presenters that specific?
I just had one question, and you can tell me if it's allowed or out of order. We had Ms. Bester from the chamber, and then we had several presenters talk from a business point of view. I've had many conversations with business owners over the last couple of days. My question was basically going to be, I need to know, because they're divergent points of views. Was this an administrative response from the chamber, or is this something that their membership asked to present?
If Ms. Spencer, you want to come by and answer that question.
Thank you. And the reasoning was, Cindy, because I've had quite a few conversations that are diametrically opposed to what I heard from you. So I wanted to make sure this was on behalf of the membership, or is this an administrative policy-driven response?
It is a combination, actually. When reviewing this with our boards, certain members of our board felt that they were very concerned with some of the communication that government may step in to take over running the facility. So then the added tax burden that would be to Lethbridge. So that is a lot of why I brought up, fiscal responsibility and transparency should be core components of all government decision, especially when it comes to infrastructure efficiency and enhanced marketing potential. So this project is really important to the economy of this city. And we are concerned that there's, if you've received 16 presentations from an organization and then all of a sudden it's what's happening, it just seems like there's a lot of confusion going on. And that's why we're asking for transparency and a public report of all the information, because we feel that there's information missing somewhere along the line for all this confusion.
And thank you for that, Ms. Spencer, because the challenge we have is a lot of the information is not ours to give. It's the exhibition. We don't have the controls to give that out. But just for clarity, your organization or your members would rather taxpayers gave money to another organization to run things rather than the possibility of the city using tax dollars to run.
We don't want any more tax, period.
So
this building is already in the tax line. So if all of a sudden the door is closed tomorrow, the city is on the hook for running the entire thing, which then would add to the tax line. So we want none of that.
And so you also don't want us to give any more tax dollars to the exhibition? I'm confused. You're saying no tax dollars should go towards this project. Is that what I'm hearing?
So the understanding from our perspective is this additional $2 million, which is, and that's why we want clarification on this iceberg. We want full knowledge. We understand that 90% of this conversation was in camera, and we don't have privilege to either side of the books, so to speak. So we need transparency so that we're not under the impression that the city is going to be funding the operation of this organization.
Thank you for that. Maybe I can ask that to Mr. Matthews then, if you'll permit me, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
I believe in our presentations, it was a $7 million ask from the exhibition that actually would engender, and I don't have it open, I believe it was either a $22 or $32 million tax support, further tax support to the exhibition. Was that what I heard?
Thank you, members of Asset Infrastructure SBC, to Councillor Carlson. So I'm not sure if Ms. Brown has the presentation there. We can bring that slide up for if we need to as well. But so you are correct that what the slide showed for the ask from the exhibition was $4.6 million, or just over almost $4.7 million in 4 years of loan deferrals. It showed a capital grant of roughly about $2.1 million, so the total of that is close to $6.8 million. On top of that, there was $500,000 that was being talked about inside of the resolution to go as one-time operating for the old pavilions. Another $3.8 million impact over the 30 years to investment revenues, and as well, just deconstruction of the old pavilions or repurposing of them, depending on which way council would make a decision on that. That was that other line of $11.3 million estimate at this time. So that comes to $22.3 million. Then there's also potentially in the future a parking lot piece, which is another $15.7 million estimate at this stage here, which that takes us to $38 million.
Okay, so my numbers were close. I was actually low.
That's good.
So it was not a $2 million injection. By our figures, it's substantially higher cost to the taxpayers than that. The other question, maybe Mr. Matthews, you can help me with this, because somebody approached me the other day. I can't remember who it was, and they said this 8% overrun that was talked about didn't make sense to them. Because when they tallied it up with the cost of actually doing the whole project, which is the pavilions, getting rid of them, which the exhibition says is important to their project, it's actually a 22 or 23% overrun. It's just, as you say, 11 million bucks is being deferred. Do you have? Is that math correct? That was brought up to me that they say it's only an 8% overrun. But when they take into account that the pavilions still need to come down, it's actually higher than the provincial average of 22%. I didn't do the math, so it was just a question that was posed to me. Have we looked at that at all, or is that, it's really moot, but I hear it all the time, is that, it was only 8% over cost, but there's still 12 million bucks owing on the project to finish the project. So that's a 23 to their math. I didn't do the math. I should have.
So through the chair to Councillor Carlson, so I'm not quite sure, the math that would come out with that number there. I believe, and maybe the exhibition could speak to that point, but I believe that's with their at $77.3 million. I'm presuming that's where that's coming from. So at $77.3 million, which is their new estimated total, that doesn't include the actual demolition or deconstruction of those pavilions or repurposing of it. So if you added that on, the total amount of the capital project would go up. I haven't checked the numbers or the math on what that would be, but I could do that if necessary.
It was just a question that was asked to me that they kept hearing this 8%, but then the city says there's still 11 or 12 million bucks needed to finish the project, and that really boosts the numbers. So thank you.
Councillor Croson.
Thank you, Chair. Question through the city manager, probably to Mr. Sanchez. One of the things we heard throughout, it is on. Okay. One of the things we heard, of course, is many of the overruns came because of the uncertainty, the rising interest, everything like that. We opened another building in the city this year as well, the organics recycling. Did we have cost overruns, or how did that come about? Did we manage to do that within budget?
Thanks for the question. Yes, you're correct. We opened the organics facility, which started construction or design and construction between 2021 and opening on, I believe was fall or beginning of this year, actually, technically speaking, is when we implemented the full program. And we did the commissioning of the plan, and that project came on budget and on time. And the other one that I can also mention is the one we spoke before, is the project, all the construction work that was done in downtown. That's another example of a project that came on budget. That one came 3 weeks late because of some materials were not available, and also we have some weather events that didn't allow us to finish on time on that one.
And so though, dealing with the same high interest, everything, those two came on budget?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Schmidt-Rempel. Sorry.
Wow, that was.
Excuse me.
Why are you yelling at me? A question, first off, thank you, Mr. Chair. A question first off to the City Clerk's office. I did not receive Mr. Whipple's submission, and I did not see it in the public agenda package. It is on there? Okay, I will go back and I will take a look at that. Thank you very much. Through you, Mr. Chair, to the city manager designate, you know, we keep going back to the iceberg. We keep looking at that, talking about different scenarios. When we look at that 38.1 million or 31.3 million, depending on which slide we're looking at from last week, what of that costing goes away if Exhibition Park is no longer operating the agri-food hub? Does any of that go away? What percentage, or are those costs all still there and subject to taxpayer dollars?
Through to the chair, to Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, thank you for the question on that. Actually, it would be a higher value than that if the exhibition went away. The reason I say that right now, that $500,000 is only one time that, so let me walk back and make sure you understand, for the audience, understand the $500,000. So the $500,000 of the old pavilion's operating cost, at this stage here, that cost is only one-time cost for the year till we figure out what's going on with those indoor recreation components. If those pavilions remained, it would be $500,000 ongoing until something was done with those, and that value could increase if it's operating. So i.e. if you're doing programming or something inside those besides just having the lights on and some security and some of those maintenance components. The one piece that would go away would be, actually no, it wouldn't go away, sorry. I was looking at it from the point of view that the $3.8 million, actually that wouldn't go away because now we have to actually have the full loan payments for ongoing for the 17.8. All of that would have to come up from new taxation or from reserves in the short period of time. And of course, you wouldn't want to use reserves ongoing, so you'd be raising taxation in the 2027 to 2030 for that $1.1 to $1.2 million of loan payments. So it would actually grow substantially more ongoing on that as well.
Okay, so we would see an increase to taxpayers more than what we would be seeing if we took into consideration Exhibition Park's most recent ask, which we could currently fund if we looked at funding the $2 million. I mean, and all of this would be dependent on what the province is going to do. If we were to fund the full $2 million plus the debt deferrals, we would be looking at less implications to the taxpayer than if Exhibition Park were no longer able to run the facility and in theory walked away.
So when it comes to answer your questions, Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, it's an order of magnitude. So what we're talking here is on the table is roughly somewhere around $38 million of one time, 22 immediately for their ask, potentially a further request in the future if they need that parking lot refurbishment, based on in their plans. When it comes to the future, yeah, you would have even more from that. But I think from some of the individuals that came before us before today to answer one of their questions, this would come from taxpayers' dollars. And so you would either have 22 million as short term. Could we do this? Well, that is up to council in the regards to what they do want to give up in other things. So as we mentioned, the economic SPC, there's only so many dollars inside of reserves without raising taxes, and council would have to make the decision of how much taxes they want to raise.
Okay. And then one final question I have is, will there be a report back to council on December 12th as to what we've heard back from the province? You know, we're talking about transparency, and we hear a lot of transparency going on and requests for that. Is there a report coming back for the public on December 12th as to where the province landed and how we might move forward on this? And whoever can answer that for me.
Yes, I'm happy to speak to that. So as far as a report, if we're talking about formal report, nothing written at this point unless the province sends us something in writing. We would share that with council and public. Other than that, if there is nothing or there's a phone call or something, it would be a verbal report update. That's it this time, and as of today, I have no information.
Okay, so right now, we have no report coming back to council on December 12th.
That's correct.
Councillor Parker.
Thank you very much as well, and thank you. My question is to Ms. Mearns. You kind of concerned me when, the last part of your comment, you can come up as to the microphone as I'm saying, you said you're concerned that council no longer supports this project as well as our administration. You said that at the end of your presentation. Did I hear you correctly?
I did say that, but I guess I should clarify. What I mean is there's a perception that this is in danger, and even just the conversation happening here today, if you were listening into this and it's being reported, it sounds like this is something on the outs. And when you hear that, obviously there's grave concern. And one of the things I talked about is a facility like this requires confidence of its community, confidence in its government leaders, and confidence on the people who actually use it. And it's important for the businesses in our community. I feel a strong responsibility with the Home and Garden Show because I know the hundreds of businesses that rely on that to do the business in this community. So when I hear that there's this lack of confidence or even insecurity around where this is going to go in the future, that's what I'm speaking to.
Thank you. I wanted to give you the opportunity to clarify here. Thank you, Ms. Mearns. And obviously, we put our money where our mouth is over the last few years. We put in just under $30 million or $28 million as a city, and we also backstopped a loan of $17 million. So we put our money where our mouth is, and we believed in this project with the numbers that were brought forward to us a few years back. Ms. Crane, you talk about economic tourism and all that, and I appreciate the work that you do, and congratulations on your culinary award. That's awesome. You know, no matter what happens, the building isn't going anywhere. It's not like if we don't give them the money, the building gets folded up and gets sent back somewhere else. So we're going to have an awesome facility no matter what, and who operates or how it gets operated after the review and all that, we won't know. So do you feel reassured that the building's there and no matter what, it's going to be successful? Because there's been a lot of doom and gloom and all that, but it will be operated, it will be rented out, and there's grave concerns in the community, as you can see in, I know I don't want to put a lot of weight in the roast and toast into the local paper, but when you see a good portion of the paper roast and toast, it's usually a good barometer of public sentiment, and it could be on misinformation too, and misunderstanding as well. Tourism is going to come to Lethbridge no matter what, and we have a beautiful facility. So what is your concern? Is your concern just the press that's got out there in regards to getting events? Is that what your major concern is?
There's a few different concerns. Thank you for that question. You know, again, the first is, you had asked that question in that last meeting that we had about, you know, being the bank and wanting to know the pipeline of investment that we had coming in, right? And we do have that pipeline. And going back to Ms. Mearns' comments, is that there is some concern there, right? And we have we're on the line right now to be losing some of that, right? So we do have this big, beautiful building, but until we're showing that we're behind it 100%, we may not be able to fill it. And again, this is a long-term strategy that we're moving on. So any of that concern about the confidence in our community and this facility could really, you know, damage that economic impact that we're hoping for, not only us as Tourism Lethbridge, but, you know, again, as Ms. Mearns talked about, we support the tourism industry. This goes back to the hoteliers, the restaurants, the retailers, transportation. They're all relying on major events coming into that facility, and we're trying to make it happen in as short a time as possible. So if we do go through this transition from LDE to the city, that's just going to take time. And that expands the timeline for filling that space. And that's one of the things that we would like to avoid. So that, I think...
You answered my question. Thank you. You did
okay.
good. Less is more. Just my two last questions. Mr. Matthews, when you were answering the questions to Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, you were talking about the cost of the taxpayers, but that's on the assumption there was no revenue generated by any entity operating that facility. Am I correct? That's if there was no revenue being brought in.
That is correct.
So that's worst case. Obviously, I think we can all think that we have a beautiful facility there, that it will be rented out, it will be used, and so the loss or the subsidization by the taxpayers will be less than what projected if the doors were closed and everything like that, because that's not what's going to happen.
That is true. So if the doors are open, it wouldn't be the same amount. So if the doors are closed, the question was whether if ceased operations and came to us, what would be it? Yes, it would go on, be a higher cost. It would depend on the revenues coming through.
Yeah, but you're basing on zero revenue. Thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. Bester, I just want to follow up on the question that was asked by Councillor Carlson, because people within your organization, proud members of the chamber, I might add, have grave concerns and concerned about what they saw presented to us over the last week, and they're phoning us, they're concerned and all that. So I just want to clarify this. You're not representing, you didn't do a straw poll among all your members to say, where does your stance, because I'm going to City Council. I have to know why you came here today. I just need to know why.
I came here for various reasons.
Okay.
As a business owner myself, I was a little put back from some comments that, businesses made money off of this. Of course, business makes money off of projects in this city. I'm here to defend business, and we are here to help grow our economy. So some of that statement saying business is bad because they're making money, that doesn't ever sit well with me.
No, I think that's a fair statement, because that was a question, a comment I said in the room. I said it, and I want to give clarification to that. The people that were in that room all had a financial benefit from that building being built, from people who sold furnaces and air conditioners, people who actually built the building. Mm-hmm. So it's in their best interest to make sure that those people come forward to support the project. And if I was on that side, I would do the same. It's very important. But I also, I want to quantify that question. I want to add a little more to that. But I also said that those vendors and those people did an amazing job when building that building as well. But I think it was important because we can all stack a room however we want, and we could all do it on the other side as well. But I just want to make sure that we have what I'm saying is you represent the chamber, mm-hmm. and it's a very prestigious, well-respected organization. But I want to make sure, are you representing the businesses, the hundreds of businesses? Are you representing your business? Now, you said you're a business owner, but you're not here as a business owner right now. You're here representing, because on your presentation, it says you are the CEO.
CEO, correct.
So are you representing the executive, or are you representing, you did a straw vote, and you got directive to come here?
So as you're aware, the Lethbridge Chamber of Commerce has supported the construction of this building that historically goes back years, and that was a full member recognition. Many of our members watched the presentation last week. They were concerned about some of the things they've heard. We had a board meeting last week, and we went through the room and spoke to, and many of the board members, they brought their concerns forward to me. And it was after that board meeting that an email was sent to the clerk asking if we could look at this from the concerns of the Lethbridge Chamber core policy outline. And that is why I should have talked a little faster or put those core policies at the very beginning, where those core policies of the Lethbridge Chamber of Commerce membership, which was created in 2019, then reviewed again in 2021, gives us our direction. And that is what I spoke to today.
Thank you. Ms. Bester, were you concerned at all in the presentation that you saw last week?
I had a lot of concerns because transparency was one of the big things. You know, I appreciate there was a lot of in-camera here, in-camera there, but when that is where that lack of communication, because let's be frank, I hear this side, I hear that side, and everything in between. What I'm asking for is clarification from all levels of government, just to understand, how do we best make this project succeed for the betterment of our community so we are limited to the exposure of risk?
And so you do support, as a chamber, the audited report of the organization and the operations of it, the third party?
Yes, I want to see that third-party report, and that's why I'd asked if we could have a public presentation of it, because we need to see that audit, we need to see that report.
Obviously, especially when it's taxpayer dollars paying for it.
100%.
Thank you for clarification on both our parties' sides.
Of course, thank
you,
you.
Ms. Bester. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Middleton Hope.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a couple of comments, and I think this has actually been answered, but shouldn't we be concerned? We're talking about spending $100 million potentially if we do not get to the bottom of what the depth of concerns are here. We're talking about a significant amount of money for our community. So should we not be concerned? I think we absolutely should be concerned. So that comment goes back to Ms. Mearns' comment about concern. Yeah, we're absolutely concerned about this. How much is enough? That's a question that I think we need to ask the public as well as our administration. How much money is enough? We potentially will spend $77 million on this and could spend substantially more. So how much is enough? If we don't have the third-party audit, and this will be the question to Mr. Brierley, if we don't have a third-party audit, how deep do we think this goes? So, Mr. Brierley, that question is to you.
To that question, I can say at this point, I don't have the answer. The answer that I know is currently the facts before us are the $22 million, of which those $22 million, one of the facts that I would include in that is the $3.8 million loan is at 2%, which is the 10-year average of our borrowing rate, our average 10-year borrowing rate, and if it was at 5.55%, which is current, it would be $18 million. So those are facts. I am happy to speak about transparency. I'm happy to share more information on this, but council would have to pass a motion to share some of the information that's previously in camera. So I put that out to council, and I'm happy to discuss further if that's the will of council.
Thank you.
Mayor Higgin.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm hearing a lot throughout the day here of transparency. I think a lot of people feel that there's a lack of, whether it be this particular meeting we're in, or this particular item, or previous when we were talking of downtown, et cetera. The transparency seems to be really ringing clear here, to me, anyways. Including, a report that we need to get from our provincial partners as far as what happens going forward, as Councillor Schmidt-Rempel had mentioned. Transparency, absolutely, we do need to have transparency, and I guess I could mention to everyone here. I'm sure most people do know. I did a rather quick trip up to Edmonton to shake a few trees, obviously, and I know that Mr. Workington was up there with me here on a couple days ago, and so when I hear the comment of we don't believe that there's support, I need to reemphasize to everyone that anyone that I've talked to here supports that project, supports the exhibition. Understand, we support the exhibition, that project. Now, what we're down to is the amount of dollars that, how we find those dollars. What are we going through taxation? Are we going through possibly a provincial grant? And I mean, we're in the 11th hour, of course, but it's important to understand that we all support this project if it was what we were told it was going to be when it was first presented to us. Of course we would present. Things have changed. Things have changed, and this is why we're here today and why we've been here for 17, 18, 22, whatever the meetings are that we've been in. That's why we're here today. if it was moving along like what we were told a few years ago, when this support came through from both ourselves, the province and exhibition, we wouldn't be here today. We'd be hearing how wonderful things were and all of the revenues that were coming in, et cetera, et cetera. We're not having that conversation. So please understand the support that we had for a project that we were peddled some time ago. That's important to know. I do think it's important that, I'm going more into debate than question, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, but I do want to ask Mr. City Manager how we got here today. Now, this does include a resolution from council that we do share information that comes from closed meetings. And I want to tell you why we had those closed meetings. We didn't want to be here today. By having those closed meetings, we tried to delay this today. And the reason we had the closed meetings is so that out in the public, they weren't saying, gosh, this place is going to close down. We better run far from it. We got 2 more people that don't want to come and visit the exhibition. We had these meetings enclosed specifically to try to alleviate some of those concerns out in the community. If we started from 2 years ago, I don't even think we'd be here. I think we would already be done if we had started the same conversations we had bluntly a year and a half ago. So understand why we have these closed session meetings. They are not for a lack of transparency to the public, but it's to protect the organization, city organization, as well as the exhibition. And that's why we have these meetings. I hear so much, we're not sharing, and dang it gets so frustrating because we're doing this for the betterment of both that organization and for the city and those taxpayers. So if I would like to ask the permission of my colleagues to have the Mr. City Manager explain how we got here today, which will include this information from some closed sessions. And if that is okay, and I don't know, Mr. City Manager, if there's anything you can, I know I kind of had a sidebar because I just want this to be out and as transparent as we can be.
I see.
Mr.
Lowen wants to weigh in.
Yeah, that's exactly. I would need city solicitor, city clerks to rule on what the next steps are.
I was just going to get in the queue to confer with the clerk about how we might procedurally have the committee deal with that, and I'd at this point like to turn it over to the clerk to give his thoughts on that.
But you're ready for that one.
Oh yeah, certainly.
Those resolutions of council were a resolution of council. This is a SPC and is thus not all of council. I would suggest if the SPC and the members of council who are here, who are entitled to be part of any closed session of the SPC, would like to go to a closed session to discuss that, we could go into a closed session at this time to discuss what that would look like and how that could be done. But do recall those resolutions were done by a majority of council in a council meeting.
Okay, there we go. So no, and thank you for that. It's council meetings. Some of these times, these meetings blend. As you've noticed, I was voting when I probably shouldn't have been voting here previously. So my hand was going up. It just happens to come. So yes, I thank you very much for that. But we will. I think it's important that we look at this, and I know we have to go almost into a closed session to talk about stuff outside that was in the closed session in public. It kind of seems a little confusing, doesn't it, to the public? But however, I personally would like to make that, or I guess I can't make a motion, can I, because I'm not on this committee. Well, that didn't work very well. So.
I just want to point, I understand what you want to do, Mayor Higgin, but out of fairness to the exhibition and to our organization, and not to catch the city manager off guard here, I think it's prudent that you talk to these parties before regarding, because there's a reason why we go in camera to protect certain organizations and all that. And Ms. Bester uses the word transparency. We try to be as transparent as we can. And when you said, Ms. Bester, the audit and all that will bring out exactly what's happening and all that in a proper way. But I think it's not a decision that you can make today. Right. I think you have to talk to your parties, you got to talk to your colleagues, and you have to talk to your administration, both administrations. I'm just going to make that suggestion. I think what you're trying to do is just like bring the temperature down by doing it, but I think you'd actually bring the temperature up if we started entertaining those conversations. That's my perspective, and that's my recommendation. Just to hold off, maybe we can discuss this in the days to come.
All right, I can appreciate that. It's just, again, I thought it would bring forward some of well, we hear a lack of transparency. You guys aren't telling us as we heard from the business community and Ms. Bester, and it's frustrating. I appreciate the questions that were asked because I am a member of the Chamber of Commerce. I wasn't asked about this, and that's kind of frustrating to me too. And so, I hear this going about, and transparency comes from both sides, and we just want to make sure that we can get through this, and I believe we will. However, casting stones and doing what we're doing now, as far as it's, this is done, said deal. We believe it's going to be done. We've got people that are canceling their events and et cetera. It doesn't help anyone. So that's why, if we're to this point now.
I see Councillor Carlson wanted to weigh in on this.
Yes, sorry, Councillor Carlson, I'm going on and on and on, and my apologies, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. You get a lot of leeway because of your festive suit today. I guess my question is, and I wasn't sure what the city manager was going to share. I was trying to jump in to say I would not be prepared to share all of our in-camera because of the sections that govern the interest of another organization. And it's not our place to share the exhibition's information. However, if the city manager was going to share our information, because I'm thinking back to things like timelines, what we were told at certain periods, I think that would be fair game. But I would not want to share anything without the exhibition's approval or express approval of us sharing it. So that was only going to be my comment, Mr. Chair. And I wanted to thank Councillor Middleton Hope jumped in to ask my question when I was worried about how much is too much. I keep hearing, the phrase "too big to fail" just keeps popping up in my mind, and the worry about the taxpayer dollars. But when I hear it, it's 7 million, it's 22 million, it's 38 million. Thank you, John, for asking how much is too much for our taxpayers to foot the bill. That's my only concern, because that phrase "too big to fail" has always ruffled me the wrong way. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair, to the city manager or designate, just looking at ways and monies to fund this project, where would we stand in regards to grant funding if Lethbridge and District Exhibition were to no longer be the operator? Are we eligible for any grant funding or anything like that? Can we apply for grant funding from either the provincial or federal governments? Are we eligible for the same kind of grants? Anything?
Through the chair to Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, I guess it depends on what type of areas you're looking at. I presume what you're referring to is like the Ag Society grants and so forth. Is that what you're? Just want to get some clarity.
Sure, even starting there.
Okay, so some of those things we just won't know at this stage here, and that's where I'd have to get my colleague Mr. Lowen to help out on. So I don't know what the status of that particular kind of granting fund would be, because it is to do with the Ag Society and so forth and a different legal entity. When it comes to operating grants for facilities, if that's what you're talking about, and now here again, assuming that it's not just there's other revenues besides just those. But the reality is that most other levels of governments don't fund operating besides outside of those type of ag grants and so forth, specifically for this area. So I'm not aware of those components. When it comes to capital, yes, there obviously is capital for different pieces, but here again, we get the same amount of allocation of what will be the local government's fiscal framework component, and that would be a decision of council to allocate and amongst all the other projects that council has. As recollect we have about 260 million or almost $280 million worth of projects. If I remember the slide in front of me, or before me a couple of weeks ago on that, of projects that are unfunded at this stage. So this would just be in addition to those amounts. So the reality is that, yeah, is there other grants that you could look at potentially as they come along, but they're not usually this large of grants that would run those kind of facilities.
Thank you.
Councillor Crowson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to take the prerogative that Councillor Middleton Hope did and ask myself the question so I can provide the answer. I wouldn't be me if I didn't try to give this perspective, and I appreciate so much the uncertainty and concern expressed by every one of the speakers as well as ourselves. But I was just going through my head rapidly and thinking 1992, 1940, 1930s, 1920s. Those are just off the top of my head, the time City Council has bailed the exhibition out. We've had Parks Department actually run the exhibition in the past, and the exhibition just offer the fare. We have had so many things, and it has always worked out. And that's what people have to keep in mind. These two organizations have been working back and forth for 120 some years. It has been contentious at times. It has been difficult at times. There have been many issues. The exhibition has had to change its purpose and its activities and a lot of things over those years. But the two groups have managed to work together through all of these things over the years. And the only way they do it is by keep talking and by working with the public. So just keep in mind, it seems terrible right now, but it's been worse. So that's the question I asked myself.
Mr. Matthews, has it been worse?
My apologies, I wasn't referring, going back to Councillor Crowson's comment there. I was actually going to go back to Councillor Schmidt-Rempel's there. The one thing that Mr. Brierley reminded me of as well too, that the reality, one thing to keep in mind is that the Ag Society can be still operating regardless of the fact of what goes on. So they could be two separate things. So don't know what models look like, and what would all the different examples or what you're considering there, Councillor Schmidt-Rempel. But there's a number of different factors that would have to come into play if we were looking at different funding.
Any other questions before we wrap up? We do have one from Councillor Palladino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one quick question, and it's not as heavy as all of the big dollar ones. Yeah, to myself. What became of, or where is the initiative to do the feasibility study on repurposing the two buildings, or the three buildings, I guess it is?
Mr. Elliott.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Palladino. On Tuesday at Council, there will be a verbal report given on updating both the building condition assessment and the functional assessment study.
All right, great, thanks.
Thank you. That's awesome.
I see no other questions. Just for information. I think, I mean, we've heard a lot of information here today. It's not probably in the best interest for us to divulge all of the in-camera information. We also we have a meeting next Tuesday, and if it's the will of this committee, I think we'll just table this as for information for right now. Accept it. Okay, so if we just accept this as information, we'll move into next Tuesday and continue on. Is that? Okay. Be it resolved that the Civic Works Standing Policy Committee held. Oh, what are we called? Sorry. Oh, that was the adoption. Okay. Be it resolved that the Assets and Infrastructure Standing Policy Committee receive today's the Lethbridge and District exhibition item as information. Any comments? Question's been called. All in favor? Okay. Whew. Thank you. Adjourned. Thank you.